Hi everyone, this is What If Fan. I will not be able to upload tomorrow as such. This is another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy today, and there will be no uploads tomorrow. Please find fanfic name and author name in the description, and please support the author. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Let's start chapter 161, Luminarquia 01. Third person POV Luminarquia, first half of Grand Line. As the Black Pearl approached Luminarquia, some members of the Straw Hats crew, the most eager for new sights, gathered on the deck, observing the island emerging on the horizon. The island shone under the sun, reflecting light on its golden sandy beaches and silver-leaf trees, creating a dazzling spectacle that left everyone on board awestruck. "This is amazing!" exclaimed Usopp, his eyes wide with admiration. "Let's see what this island has to offer," said Hachi, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. As the crew prepared to anchor while the island got closer and closer, Luffy headed to the ship's prison, where Jinbei was detained. "Mugiwara-chan!" Bon Clay shouted excitedly as always when Luffy appears in the prison. "Good morning, my friend, how are you?" Luffy greeted. "I'm fine, Mugiwara-chan called me a friend. What joy!" He began to dance ballet. "Shay, Straw Hat, we saw the trophy that Swordsman brought, with Crocodile detained. What do you plan to do with us?" Mr. asked cautiously, as they were in the hands of these pirates whose intentions were still unknown. "I have a plan for you. You are weak, but I intend to strengthen everyone. You will be members of the Straw Hat Fleet," John announced, shocking everyone. "Fleet?" Makita asked. "Exactly. I will make all of you powerful members of our pirates." "Why would we accept this?" Mr. 3 asked. "I will accept. I will join Mugiwara-chan's group. Since Crocodile was defeated, there is no more Baroque works." "Well, mister, you don't have much choice, but don't worry. None of you will regret this," Luffy warned and turned his attention to the last cell. "Hello again, Jinbei." Upon reaching the cell, he found Jinbei sitting calmly, as if he had been waiting for the captain's visit. "Jinbei, it's time to go up to the deck," said Luffy with a confident smile. Jinbei looked at Luffy and nodded without resisting, as he couldn't do much. Luffy opened the cell and helped Jinbei to stand up. Together, they walked towards the deck, where the crew was already gathering, eager to explore Luminarquia. Upon reaching the deck, Luffy's crew looked at Jinbei, surprised and curious. Some, like Usopp and Chopper, seemed worried about the presence of the Shichibukai. "Luffy, what are you planning?" asked Nami, approaching the captain. Luffy, with his characteristic smile, replied, "I'm going to release Jinbei as I promised my brother. It's time to say goodbye to him. Come on, guys. Say a last word to our friend who accompanied us last week." "Goodbye, Jinbei." The chorus was so weak that the only ones who were sincere were Shirahoshi and Hachi. "At least be sincere," Jinbei shouted with his comical face. "Ha ha 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 ha. It's because you're not part of the crew. Are you sure you don't want to join the band?" Luffy asked the Blue Fish Man again. "I'll decline," he said dryly, and Luffy sighed. "All right, you're free now," Luffy said as he removed the last chains. Jinbei, now free, looked straight at Luffy, with a serious expression. "Luffy, I won't join your crew, but I have a request. Take good care of Shirahoshi-sama. You may not have kidnapped her in the way we thought, but you have the responsibility to protect her. And the Island of Fishmen will never forgive you if she gets hurt on your boat." Luffy nodded with a confident smile. "Don't worry, Jinbei. Shira is my companion and we'll take care of each other. She's already part of my family." Shirahoshi turned extremely red with Luffy mentioning a companion and among my family, taking it differently from what Luffy meant. She looked at Jinbei with a slight blush on her cheeks. "Jinbei, thank you for worrying about me. I'll be fine with Luffy and tell Dad and my brothers that I miss them, and that I love them very much. But now I have to stay with Luffy-sama." She finished looking at Luffy even redder. Vivi beside her was shocked by Shirahoshi's behavior, already seeing what it meant. Jinbei smiled gently at her. "You've grown up a lot, Shirahoshi-sama. Your father would be proud. Well, it's time for me to go." With those words, Jinbei bid farewell, diving into the depths of the sea, leaving the Straw Hat crew looking towards the horizon. Luffy, looking at Shirahoshi, said, "Well, let's continue our adventure, folks. Next stop, Luminarquia." The crew, excited, returned to their activities, while Shirahoshi watched the sea, thoughtful, but with a slight smile on her face. She knew she was safe and valued among the Straw Hats. As the Black Pearl approached the illuminated Luminarquia, the imposing silhouette of the ship cut against the horizon, announcing its arrival. The island's port, normally a bustling and cheerful place of trade, began to stir with the news of the infamous Straw Hat pirates' approach. The inhabitants of Luminarquia, known for their wealth and tranquility despite the trafficking of arms and slaves, were protected by one of the biggest names in the underworld. Thus, the citizens were not accustomed to visits from hostile, notorious pirates. As the ship neared, the port workers, merchants, and citizens stopped their activities, looking fearfully towards the sea. The news of the arrival of the Straw Hat Pirates spread quickly, stirring a mix of fear and curiosity among the population. "Mugiwara's here in Luminarchia?" murmured a merchant, not overly concerned, as many pirates stopped in this realm but none caused problems. "It can't be. They are the pirates who captured a vice-admiral and 2 shichibukais," exclaimed another, recalling the recent stories that had circulated through the seas. "Will they cause us trouble?" a guard asked, arriving at the port. "Of course not, he can't not know that this island belongs to an underworld trade," another said. "Even so, haven't you heard that they captured 2 shichibukai? The government must be grinding their teeth with this and sending their main forces to catch them. Do you think this pirate fears the underworld?" A third spoke reasonably. As the Black Pearl approached the dazzling Luminarchia, the Straw Hat crew gathered on deck, their expressions varying between excitement and curiosity. The island glowed in the distance, like a twinkling treasure amidst the vast ocean. "Wow, look at that!" exclaimed Usopp, pointing at the island with eyes wide in admiration. "I've never seen anything like it." Nami, with an analytical gaze, held her map and observed the island. "It's incredible," she commented. "The way the light reflects off that crystal mountain, it's like the island itself is alive, and that crystal looks like it's worth a lot of money." Nami had dollar signs in her eyes at that moment. Luffy stood at the ship's railing, a huge smile on his face. "This is going to be fun. I'm thinking of stealing that giant crystal." He was already planning his heist. Beside him, Zoro crossed his arms and looked into the distance, a serious look, but not without a hint of interest. "I just hope we get some interesting fight," he said. Chopper was perched on Robin's shoulder, his eyes shining with excitement. "Do they have different suites there?" he asked, with a thought typical of a child. Robin, with a subtle smile, stroked Chopper's head. "They must have. Fu. I had heard of the island, but this is the first time I see it." Shirahoshi, accompanied by Megalo, looked at the island with an expression of pure enchantment. "It's so beautiful. I've never seen anything like this under the sea," she said with admiration. Beppo, next to Lami, analyzed the horizon. "Looks like an important place." Lami, with a keen look, nodded in agreement with Beppo. "Yes, places like this usually attract all kinds of people." Vivi and Karoo exchanged excited glances, while the princess held her duck firmly. "Karoo, what a beautiful place," she commented with a smile. "Karoo!" The duck raised its hand in agreement. Reiju observed the island with an air of calm confidence. "Something tells me we're going to cause another chaos on this entire island," she pondered. Choo-Choo, the crew's little dog, played happily with Laboon and Megalo. He ran excitedly, while Laboon the whale splashed water and Megalo the shark did acrobatics beside the ship. The other members of the crew also shared this mix of excitement and readiness for what they would find in Luminarchia. As the ship neared the port, the crew prepared to disembark. The Black Pearl, majestic in its structure with sails billowing in the wind, slowly approached the port of Luminarchia. The Straw Hat crew, gathered on the deck, watched with anticipation the bustling docks of the island, where the commotion was visible even from a distance. "Prepare to anchor!" shouted Nami, as the crew members moved with their tasks of lowering the sail and anchor while the ship lost speed beside the port. Usopp and Hugo, working together, lowered the sails, while Zoro and Chopper, in his muscular form, firmly held the ropes, ready to tie the ship to the dock. When the ship stopped at the port, many people stopped to see the notorious pirates with bounties totaling over 1 billion, amounting to 1,245,010 berries. "It's that flag! The Straw Hats are here!" someone shouted, causing a buzz among the crowd with those who did not know of the approaching ship. Luffy, standing at the bow, looked at the gathered crowd with a broad smile. "Seems like we're already famous around here," he commented, excited by the reception. The ship finally docked, and the ropes were thrown, tying it firmly to the dock. The crew, now ready to disembark, joined Luffy at the bow. "Let's go, guys, let's see what this island has to offer," Luffy declared enthusiastically, leading the way as they descended from the ship in front of the island's port, enveloped with a gigantic crystal. As the crew stepped onto the dock, a mix of fear and admiration emanated from the locals. Some stepped back, while others approached, curious to see the famous pirates up close. Some women screamed at Luffy, seeing a handsome, strong, and famous pirate. The arrival of the Straw Hats in Luminarchia caused uncertainty among the island's people, wondering if their arrival would bring chaos, or if they would depart in peace without interfering with their business. In the royal palace of Luminarchia, The king, a man of distinctive appearance with a prominent nose, received the news of the Straw Hat's arrival with a mix of surprise and apprehension. Seated on his ornate throne, he frowned as he listened to his advisor report the recent feats of the notorious pirate monkey D. Luffy. They captured 2 Shichibukais and a vice-admiral? The king repeated incredulously. His fixed gaze on the advisor reflected the seriousness of the situation. And now they are here, in Luminarchia. Without wasting time, the king picked up the Den Mushi and dialed a number known only to a few, the number of a joker, the infamous Doflamingo, king of the underworld, whose influence extended across many islands and nations. The phone rang, and after a brief moment, Doflamingo's characteristic laughter echoed from the other side of the line. Fu, I hear we have some interesting visitors in Luminarchia. Doflamingo spoke with his usual tone of sadistic amusement. Yes, it's the pirate Luffy and his crew. They've just arrived, informed the king, trying to maintain his composure despite the tense situation. Ah, Luffy. That name has been popping up quite a bit lately, Doflamingo commented, clearly entertained. So would have thought the little pirate would cause such a stir. What should we do, Joker? They are dangerous, and I don't want trouble in Luminarchia, the king expressed his concern. Doflamingo laughed again before responding. Leave them be for now. In fact, I would like to speak with the Straw Hats personally when I get the chance. Maybe they are more useful than we imagine. The king hesitated for a moment, but knew that contradicting Doflamingo was not an option. As you wish, Joker. And great. Keep me informed about their movements, and don't interfere unless absolutely necessary. Also invite them to the auction, Doflamingo instructed before hanging up. The king placed the phone back on the hook and sighed deeply. As he observed his kingdom through the palace windows, he couldn't help but worry about what the presence of the Straw Hats might mean for Luminarchia, and whether the underworld named Joker would prevent any action by Luffy against the kingdom. Chapter 162, Luminarchia 02 Third-Person POV Luminarchia First Half of Grand Line.
With the crew at the harbor, Luffy gazed at the city and the Crystal Mountain with some admiration.
This world never ceases to amaze me, he murmured. Wow. Luffy, are we going to steal all that crystal? Yamato asked innocently. Ha ha ha. Most likely, though I don't know how I'll shrink it down that much, Luffy murmured. Anyway, that's a concern for another time. Luffy, with his usual enthusiasm, addressed his crew gathered at the harbor under the gaze of hundreds of curious onlookers, wondering whether the pirates would start looting the kingdom or not. All right, guys, he began, with a confident smile and his gaze sweeping over the faces of his companions. Feel free to explore the island and do whatever you want with a day off. Just remember one thing, meet back here at dusk. We have an underworld auction to attend. Hey little one, what's an underworld auction, do you know, Dory? Broggy asked, as the giants were still unaware of Luffy's plans. I don't know, Broggy. Tell us, Captain, what's an underworld auction? Dory inquired. It's a place where rare and sometimes dangerous items are sold, Robin explained. There's a lot of money and powerful people in that place. And are there strong people there, Dory? Broggy murmured. Zoro, crossing his arms, added, So I'm expecting a good fight here, haven't found any worthy opponent since entering the Grand Line. Look at the guards who came to greet us. Do you think this island has any strength? Reiju spoke, pointing to the men at the harbor with spears and weapons. Seeing the crew pointing at them, the guard who seemed to be the captain stepped forward a bit cautiously about the intentions of these pirates and spoke directly to Luffy. Your Excellency, Straw Hat, may we know what you plan on this island? He asked Luffy, who was somewhat disconcerted by the overly formal approach, as he was not used to it. We're just enjoying the island and what it has to offer, so don't worry about us. During the day, Luffy murmured the last part softly. The guards seemed relieved and made way for Luffy and his crew to pass. The rest of the crew expressed their excitement and curiosity in various ways, some eager to explore the island, others more interested in the auction that would take place at night. Make sure to come back here before dusk. I don't want to leave anyone behind, Luffy finally said, giving them a nod. With that, the Straw Hat crew dispersed, each following their path to explore the charms and mysteries of Luminarchy. As the Straw Hat crew dispersed to explore Luminarchy, Luffy decided to stay with Robin and Nami. They walked through the vibrant streets of the city, where every corner revealed a junction with the city and the crystals that characterized the island. Luffy, walking leisurely with his girls, was just looking with interest at the structure of the island, and nothing else seemed worthy in his eyes at the moment. Robin, with her usual calm, smiled softly while looking at the shop windows. "Oh, what, you want that necklace, Robin?" Luffy asked, seeing her blue eyes on the object. "I don't need it, Luffy. she commented timidly. Hey Luffy, are you only offering to her? What about me? Nami exclaimed, quite dissatisfied. Hey, if you want it, I'll give it to you. I only mentioned it because I saw Robin's interest in the object. Luffy calmly commented. That's strange, why are you being so helpful to her? I also noticed you sneaking out at night sometimes, you're not sleeping together, are you? Nami had a critical look. While Robin seemed to have committed a crime and was blushing, Luffy just smiled and shrugged before entering the store. Yes we are, Luffy says, and opens the door of the shop to buy the necklaces with island crystals. You're lucky I love you, and you're going to give me a beautiful necklace, Nami murmured irritably as she entered the shop, because it seemed that Luffy was going to get involved with all the women in the crew, which would make him pay less attention to her. Sometime later, the trio was walking through the city again, while Nami and Robin had shiny necklaces around their necks. Nami didn't seem as irritated as before, but Robin was still shy after Luffy's revelation. The Straw Hat crew spread throughout Luminarchy, each member delighting in the city's unique offerings and attractions. The streets were filled with shops selling everything from sparkling jewelry to exotic artifacts, while the tempting aromas of street food filled the air. Amidst the fun, the crew noticed posters of the island's king everywhere. The king had a long, distinctive nose, which led to a recurring joke among them. Could the king be related to Usopp? Luffy asked, laughing. Even Usopp, surprised by the resemblance in another part of the island, asked bewilderedly, could I have a lost uncle here? As the sun set over Luminarchy, the Straw Hat crew prepared for the exclusive event of the night, the auction. After meeting back at the ship still docked at the harbor, the Straw Hat crew dressed up for the underworld event. The men, including Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, Beppo, Hugo, Hachi, Bragi and Dory, dressed elegantly for the occasion. Luffy, in a classic black suit, kept his distinctive straw hat, adding a touch of personality to the formal attire. All members wore similar outfits. Only Chopper had a small smoker matching him in his smaller form. The women of the crew, including Nami, Lami, Robin, Reiju, Nojiko, Kuina, Alvida, Shirahoshi and Vivi, engaged in a friendly competition to choose the most stunning dresses. Nami opted for an elegant orange dress, emphasizing her curves, while Robin chose a long blue dress with a subtle floral pattern. Reiju shone in a bold red dress while competing with Lami in a black dress, capturing everyone's attention. Nojiko and Kuina chose styles reflecting their unique personalities, with Nojiko in calm blue tones and Kuina in a dress honoring her swordsmanship skills. Alvida, with her confident stance, chose a red dress. Shirahoshi dazzled with a dress reflecting the beauty of the ocean, leaving her tail exposed, and Vivi presented herself with characteristic royal elegance. The only odd one out was Yamato, still wearing her Wano attire, refusing to change. Together, they formed a diverse and impressive group, ready to make their mark at the auction. Luffy left the animals on the ship docked in the harbor so they could act from that side. Karoo, Laboon and Choo-Choo would act as soon as they received the signal from Luffy. The competition heated up as they decided who would accompany Luffy to the event. Nami, Yamato, Alvida, each tried to convince Luffy to choose her as his partner for the night, while Nojiko and Robin calmly watched the situation with a hint of amusement. Luffy, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, just laughed and tried to calm the situation. Eventually, he proposed a Solomonic solution. He would alternate walking with each of them throughout the night. So the Straw Hat crew set off for the auction, a mix of elegance and anticipation in the air. As they walked through the illuminated streets of Luminarchy, they attracted everyone's attention, a sight of strength, mystery, and charm, prepared for a night that would shake the island's foundations. Upon entering the auction venue, an imposing house filled with rustic decorations and crystals, the crew immediately became the center of attention as they headed for the entrance. The luxurious hall was filled with underworld criminals and nobles from various kingdoms, all elegantly dressed and immersed in whispered conversations and negotiations. When Luffy and his crew entered, a momentary silence fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to them, some in admiration, others in fear, and many with a mix of both feelings. The fact that Luffy had a bounty of 300 million berries weighed in the air, making even the most powerful criminals and nobles feel a chill of respect and apprehension. Whispers began to spread quickly through the hall. It's Monkey D. Luffy, the son of the world's greatest criminal and grandson of the naval hero Garp, was heard whispering. As curious eyes assessed each member of the crew, from the imposing Zoro to the elegant Nami. The recent exploits of the Straw Hats in Alabasta, especially the capture of 2 Shichibukais and a vice admiral, had spread like wildfire, increasing their fame and fearsomeness in all parts of the world. It's really him, Monkey D. Luffy. They say he defeated 2 Shichibukais and a vice admiral. Such audacity, Sinus Group. They're not mere rookie pirates. There's something about them that exudes danger and strength. We need to keep an eye on them, some whispered, while others looked on in admiration. He's even more impressive in person. Some women commented, fascinated by the young pirate's presence. "The most handsome man I've ever seen," a lady murmured, unable to take her eyes off Luffy. The women of the crew did not go unnoticed. "But how can they be so beautiful?" several attendees questioned, impressed with Nami's elegance, Robin's grace, Reiju's boldness, and Shirahoshi's natural beauty. "And that's a real mermaid. I've never seen such beauty," someone exclaimed, pointing to Shirahoshi. Hachi, the fishman, received mixed looks. Some showed disgust due to prejudice against his species, but most agreed that it was better not to provoke a member of the Straw Hats. "Better not mess with them," a noble whispered, aware of the power and fame the group carried. Luffy, with his confident and relaxed smile, seemed indifferent to the whispers and stares. He walked with a carelessness that starkly contrasted with the room's tension. His demeanor not only reaffirmed his reputation but also heightened the aura of mystery and power around him. As Luffy and his crew began to mingle among those present at the auction, the event manager, a man of elegant posture and shrewd gaze with a short stature, approached them. With a diplomatic smile, he bowed respectfully and spoke in a polite tone. "Captain Monkey D. Luffy, it's an honor to have you here at our auction. In light of your recent feats and notoriety, we've prepared a special, very important person room for you and your companions." Luffy, with his usual carefree smile, looked at the manager and nodded. "Sounds fun, let's go." The manager led the crew through the hall filled with criminals and nobles, taking them to a more secluded and elevated area. The VIP room offered a privileged view of the auction stage through a glass, with comfortable velvet armchairs and a table laden with delicacies and fine drinks. The crew members looked around, settling in as they drank and ate the food provided by the auction house. Luffy, walking up to the room's window, observed the auction below. "I hope there's something interesting to bid on," he murmured, owning a store that could buy almost anything in this world. But participating in an auction was a good diversion. The auction didn't take long to start, with a series of rare and valuable items being presented and eagerly bid on by the attendees. "Nothing interesting. Where are the swords?" Zoro complained. "It's an auction, there's everything." "Be patient, Zoro," Quina murmured. Luffy and his crew watched with varying interest. Nami and Robin seemed particularly attentive to the more valuable items, while Zoro remained uninterested, more focused on the drink in his hand. Usopp and Chopper were amazed by each new item revealed, commenting among themselves about their rarity and value. As the auction progressed, the atmosphere began to change. The presenter, a man with a powerful voice and imposing presence, announced that the next part of the auction would be dedicated to woven goods. A murmur ran through the crowd, and the Straw Hats' expressions hardened. One after another, slaves were brought onto the stage. They were human men, women, and even children, some clearly frightened, and others resigned to their cruel fate. Bids began, with voices rising to make offers for these human lives. Luffy, whose normally cheerful expression had turned somber, clenched his fists in anger. The injustice before his eyes deeply infuriated him. The rest of the crew also showed clear signs of disgust. "This is disgusting," Nami murmured, her face showing contempt. Robin, with her usual calm, added, "It's a grim reminder of how cruel this world can be." The crew's eyes turned to Luffy, waiting for his reaction. The captain of the Straw Hats stared intently at the stage, his hardened gaze suggesting he was pondering an action. "We won't act yet. We have time." Meanwhile, they were about to receive a visit in their very important person room from the king himself, holding a specific Denden Mushi, wearing glasses, and with an iconic smile. Chapter 163. Luminarquia, 03. Third person POV Luminarquia, first half of Grand Line. As human slaves were brought onto the stage, the auctioneer, with a voice echoing authority and greed, announced each of the slaves, describing them as if they were mere commodities. The first to be presented were men and women of various ages and nationalities. Some seemed to have been fishermen or rural workers, captured and forced into a terrible fate. Others looked like people who had already lost all hope, their gazes empty and resigned. Bids started to be made, with values varying, but quickly reaching exorbitant figures. The bids for these male human beings reached up to million berries among the strongest. Nami, whose own history was stained by slavery and loss, felt each bid as a personal blow. How can they treat people this way? She wondered in a low voice, her expression a mix of anger and sadness. "This is so cruel," Shirahoshi commented, frightened. The crew represented freedom at sea. Seeing such a scene was abominable to him. As the auction continued, an even more disturbing situation unfolded. Semi-nude women were brought onto the stage, displayed in a degrading manner before the ravenous crowd of buyers. These women, some young and others older, were presented with a vulgarity that only served to accentuate the obscenity of the event. The auctioneers described each woman lasciviously, highlighting their physical characteristics and suggesting indecent uses for them. Bids for these women started high and quickly escalated, with some reaching the figure of million berries. It was a scene that distilled the purest form of exploitation and dehumanization. "Sis is sick," Luffy said aloud, unable to hide his disgust. "Do we still have to watch all of this?" Vivi complained, not appreciating any of what she witnessed. Hugo, whose past was also marked by slavery, felt a wave of overwhelming anger. His fists were clenched so tightly that rocks began to form from his Akuma no Mi power. Luffy turned to his companion. "Calm down, Hugo, we'll sort this out, but we can't lose our heads," he said in a low but firm tone, trying to calm his companion. Many other crew members had distastes, some looked indifferent, but the gleam in their eyes said it wasn't a scene appreciated. Chopper and Vivi almost cried seeing this. At the height of the tension in the VIP room, an unexpected moment interrupted the growing indignation of the Straw Hat crew. The doors opened and the King of Luminarchia, who they saw on the posters, entered, his imposing presence and prominent nose immediately drawing attention. He approached Luffy with a diplomatic smile, but his eyes betrayed a hidden urgency. Luffy looked at him indifferently, wondering what that guy was doing invading his crew's space without asking if he was welcome or not, whether a king or not. Soon his guards entered with him, and the auction manager stood by his side. "Excellency Monkey D. Luffy, this is King Javier Lumen VII of Luminarchia," the manager said. "We're here because a very important guest from the underworld wishes to speak with you. He's known as Joker," the king suddenly announced, watching the Straw Hat captain's reaction closely. Luffy, who was indifferent, not liking the approach, narrowed his eyes upon hearing the name. He knew exactly who this Joker was, Doflamingo, one of the Shichibukai and a notorious figure in the New World. A member of the crew frowned at that moment, Lamy clenching her fist as this was someone she wanted to kill. "Joker, huh? Seems like he's interested in us," Luffy murmured, his casual tone hiding the strategic calculation in his mind. He knew that any involvement with Doflamingo could lead to complications, but it was also an opportunity to state his position regarding the current king of Dressrosa. Lamy approached Luffy and whispered, "Oh, be careful, Luffy. Doflamingo isn't someone to be trifled with, he's dangerous and unpredictable." The king, sensing the tension in the air, tried to ease the situation. "Don't worry, he just wants to talk, it will be in a safe place." Luffy nodded slowly, his mind already working on different scenarios. "All right, let's see what he wants," he said, stepping forward. The VIP room of the auction fell into silence as Luffy answered the Den Mushi. All eyes were on him, curiosity in the air. The King of Luminarchia handed the transmitter to Luffy, who didn't hesitate to answer it. Kacha on the other side of the line, Doflamingo greeted Luffy with his characteristic laugh and honeyed voice. "Foo foo foo foo. Monkey D. Luffy, it's a pleasure to finally speak with you." Luffy, without any trace of hesitation and with a provocative smile, responded immediately, already angry from those slaves. "Hello Joker, it's a surprise for me to be talking to you here, since it's not every day we talk to Kaido's dog." The room, already steeped in silence, seemed to freeze even more. The crew members exchanged surprised and nervous glances, while the King of Luminarchia swallowed hard, not expecting this development. Doflamingo on the other side of the line maintained his composure, but the tone of his voice revealed a slight trace of surprise and irritation. "You're more audacious than I imagined, Mugiwara. But be careful, insolence can cost you dearly." Luffy, unperturbed, kept his smile. "I'm just telling the truth." "So, Joker, what do you want? First answer me, how do you know about my involvement with Kaido?" His voice remained as annoying as ever. "Well, I'm not going to tell you and fuck what you think about it," Luffy spoke, leaving both the king and the manager stunned by Luffy's audacity. The voice of Doflamingo, transmitted through the Den Mushi, took on a threatening tone, marked by a chill. "I wanted to negotiate some things with you, Mugiwara, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. Underestimating me and the forces behind me will be your biggest mistake." Luffy, defiant and fearless, didn't miss the chance to mock Doflamingo. With an ironic smile he replied, "Wah, I'm trembling, not. You're just another Shichibukai, and I've dealt with them before. I'll give you one more chance, hand over Trafalgar D. Lamy from your crew and I can save you from your imminent destruction." Joker spoke with a tone of anger and demand. "Do you talk such nonsense there in Dressrosa? How did you become a king like that?" Demanding one of my crewmates is the same as asking to die. Are you wanting that so much, Doflamingo? The room remained silent. The crew members watching the interaction, alternating between tension and admiration for Luffy's audacity. Luffy's provocation clearly irritated Doflamingo, but he maintained control, responding with a cold and calculating voice. Be careful, Luffy. My patience has limits. Don't provoke a sleeping dragon. Luffy shrugged, unconcerned. Dragon or not, I don't care. I was here to have fun, but then I saw your living items in the hall, and the audacity of this king and the manager to invade the space where me and my crew were, so I'm not in a good mood anymore. This left the men who were not from the crew quite nervous about their mistake. I could save you, but I see that you are just an arrogant kid. Your time is running out, and the one you said is my master has already sent forces to hunt you in this sea, Doflamingo mocked. I see. That should be expected. Luffy understood what Doflamingo meant by that. After all, Yamato is in his crew, and her image in the newspaper and on the wanted posters would reach Kaido one way or another. He was always aware that he would be hunted. Joker or Doflamingo, I should thank you for this information. Kaido couldn't come to this sea without bringing a fleet, which would take a lot of time. King is essential to be with Kaido. Queen wouldn't leave the new world so easily, so the person who is pursuing us must be Jack the Drought or some members of the Flying Six, Luffy commented calmly. That old bastard, I'll beat him when I get to Wano. Yamato exclaimed furiously in the background. Yamato's father is Kaido? Vivi exclaimed in shock, as she still didn't know this fact, just like Robin, who looked shocked at the woman dressed in Wano's attire. Luffy turned back to the Denden Mushi and began to laugh when he saw a silence from Doflamingo. He started to laugh openly at the prospect of facing such a formidable opponent. Luffy expressed his excitement for the imminent hunt. So Jack is after us? This is going to be interesting, he said, without a hint of fear or hesitation. On the other side of the line, Doflamingo frowned, realizing that Luffy was not an ordinary pirate. Luffy's lack of fear and his willingness to face the forces of Kaido, one of the most feared names in the world as if it were an adventure, was disconcerting even to him. Doflamingo, well aware of Kaido's ferocity and his subordinates, was impressed and even a bit disturbed by Luffy's courage. Luffy spoke again into the silent communication device with Joker's face. So Joker, since we're enemies, it's okay if I loot this auction house, right? You won't mind that? On the other side of the line, Doflamingo visibly gets irritated with Luffy's audacity. If you dare to do this, Mugiwara, I swear you will pay dearly. Don't underestimate what I can do. Doflamingo threatens, his voice laden with fury and authority. Luffy, however, doesn't seem the least bit intimidated by the threat. With an even wider smile, he responds in a challenging tone, I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do, Joker. You won't be the first Shichibukai I take down. And with a carefree click, Luffy hangs up the Denden Mushi, cutting off the connection abruptly. The room, which was in tense silence, Luffy looks at the king and the manager, openly disturbed, and speaks with his arms crossed. Well folks, it looks like we have a looting party ahead. Many crew members, initially shocked by Luffy's audacity in challenging Doflamingo and even Kaido, soon follow with the sharp look. They prepare for what promises to be an exciting night at the auction house, ready to follow their captain into yet another audacious raid and end these slavers. Luffy, with a confident and challenging smile, breaks the glass, drawing everyone's attention while they were bidding on a frightened crying girl on the stage, and announces, loud and clear, not just to his crew, but to the entire auction house, everyone listen up. Now we, the Straw Hat Pirates, are going to start a raid. We're going to steal everything and everyone present here. So please behave while we're robbing all of you. His statement echoes through the hall, causing a mix of shock and panic among those present. And with the charged atmosphere, the Straw Hat crew prepares for the inevitable confrontation. Zoro, with a determined look, adjusts his swords, while Usopp, though nervous, seems ready for battle. Hugo, still containing his anger, positions himself strategically, ready to use his power and physical strength to protect his comrades and the oppressed. Nami looks around, her expression reflecting a mix of anger and determination in the face of the injustice of the slaves. Beppo, Hachi, and Kuina quickly face off against the king's guards. Lami looks at Luffy with some admiration for defending her, and prepares her sword while opening her room. Chopper, in his human form, seems ready to offer combat support. His eyes show a mix of determination with Luffy's words. Alvida, with her confident smile and mace in hand, is ready to face any challenge. Nojiko, standing next to her sister Nami, keeps a serious expression, her fist seeming ready to explode at any moment. Shirahoshi, still frightened, keeps her gaze fixed on Luffy, showing admiration and trust. Vivi and Robin exchange understanding glances, knowing the time to act had come. Reiju, as elegant as ever, displays a confident smile, prepared for what's to come while taking a cigarette out of her pocket. Yamato moves to Luffy's side. The giants Bragi and Dory seem very excited as they talk to each other. The crew is finally ready to act. Chapter 164, Luminarchia 04, Third-Person POV Luminarchia, First Half of Grand Line. As the turmoil takes over the auction, the Straw Hat Pirates spring into action, ready to unleash chaos. Yamato. Luffy, with a determined look, calls for Yamato, who promptly responds with a smile. With mutual understanding, they both release their King's Haki auras, a wave of power that spreads through the place. Immediately, guards and nobles, as well as the criminals present, succumb to the overwhelming power of the King's Haki, falling unconscious one after another. The room, once filled with voices and agitation, is now dominated by a muffled silence, interrupted only by the moans of the faint. King Javier Lumen VII of Luminarchy remains conscious, but clearly stunned and terrified by the power displayed by Luffy and Yamato. "What's going on?" he exclaims, his voice trembling with fear and confusion. Luffy approaches the king with a mischievous smile, revealing his plan. "Don't worry, King. You need to stay conscious to guide us in this auction," he says in a playful tone, but with a menacing glint in his eyes. Javier Lumen VII, realizing the seriousness of the situation, quickly responds, fear evident in his voice. "What do you plan to do?" With a sinister smile, Luffy replies, "You're going to obey us. I've killed a king before, so you better cooperate if you want to get out of here alive." "Don't worry, I only kill kings who annoy me." The king's immediate response is pure fear and submission. "Yes, I'll do anything," he agrees promptly, aware of the fate that awaits him if he challenges the notorious pirate. The atmosphere in the room is now a mix of tension and expectation, with the Straw Hats in control. Luffy then turns to his crew, distributing tasks efficiently. "Hugo, you and the others free all the slaves. Leave no one behind," he orders, his serious tone indicating the gravity of the situation. "Lami, use your room to collect all the jewels and valuable items. I want you to clean this place out," Luffy continues, looking at Lami, who nods and begins to execute his task with surgical precision. "Nami, you're in charge of organizing and counting all the gold. Make sure nothing is left behind," Luffy says, knowing that Nami is the best suited for the task. Luffy then addresses his fighters. "Zoro, Usopp, Reiju, Kuina, you four, defend the entrance. No one gets in, no one gets out, until we're done here," Luffy instructs. "And Yamato, you're coming with me. We need the king to guide us to the vault," Luffy concludes, giving a meaningful look to Yamato, who nods in understanding. Yamato, with his imposing stature and Wano attire, follows alongside Luffy. The king, visibly nervous, leads the way, guiding them through the auction's corridors towards the vault. Outside the auction, a group of soldiers is on high alert, aware of the chaos unfolding inside. "The Straw Hat Pirates have taken over the auction house and are holding hostages inside," shouts one of the soldiers, his voice laden with urgency. "We can't just stand here, we have to act now," exclaims another, looking around frantically. "Damn, how can we face pirates of this caliber?" questions a third, anxiety evident on his face. "Someone call for marine reinforcements, quick," demands a fourth soldier, knowing that only they could handle a threat of this level. Meanwhile, an observer points towards the entrance of the auction house. "People are coming out." It's a group of four, 2 men and 2 women, clearly recognized as members of the Straw Hats. Zoro, with an expression of slight disappointment, comments, "Looks like we're facing just soldiers and guards after all." "Don't complain, Zoro. Our job is to keep anyone from getting in," responds Usopp, already preparing his peculiar arsenal. Meanwhile, inside the auction, Luffy whistled, impressed with the reinforced structure he found. "Wow, this is really impressive," he said, assessing the robust vault door. Yamato by his side looked at Luffy with an amused expression. "And do you have a plan to open this, Luffy?" she asked. Luffy, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, replied, "Of course I do. Let's show them how the Straw Hats do a heist." He then turned to the trembling king. "And you, King, you know how to open this, don't you?" "So no, Your Excellency Mugiwara, only a few men of Joker have access to this and they are not present," he said almost pleadingly. And Luffy saw at least sincerity in that. "I see. Yamato, let's blow this door up," he said, and went to the door with his girl to punch it. The king watched stunned as Luffy and Yamato punched the door, Luffy with increased strength and Yamato with haki. In no time the door caved in with force, pushed by both their strengths, and the place filled with gold and berries quickly appeared to them. Luffy wasted no time and took all the gold for the system, leaving the king stunned as the golden money disappeared from his sight. Let's go, we have more things to steal. Luffy and Yamato moved on without paying any more attention to the king and went to meet the others at the auction stage. All the slaves were freed, many with explosive collars, but getting the keys was quite easy since there was no one to stop them inside. Everyone looked gratefully at the crew, and Luffy approached the piles of gold Nami was counting. Well, let's go, this gold I won't put in the system. Keep it for yourselves to divide, later. Luffy said, and Nami quickly rejoiced. After everything was ready, they began to leave the auction with the ex-slaves, and Luffy encountered almost all of the kingdom's soldiers fallen due to the fight by Reiju, Kuina, Zoro, and Usopp. Upon leaving the auction house, Luffy addressed King Javier Lumen VII of Luminarchy, who was still trembling with fear and uncertainty. Your Majesty, Luffy called, his voice firm and full of authority. The king, with a nervous nod, responded, Yes, yes, what do you wish? Luffy, looking around the bright and sparkling island, declared confidently with a smile, Aunt, I'm leaving, but I'm charmed by this island. I've decided I want it as my territory. I'll be back soon to claim it. Taking it from Joker's clutches. The king, still trying to process the situation, couldn't hide his surprise. But, what do you mean? This is Joker's territory, you can't just… Before he could finish, Vivi interrupted, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. Luffy, weren't you going to steal the island's crystal? Why did you change your mind? Luffy, with a carefree shrug, replied, Initially yes, but then I thought better of it. This island is much more valuable than just its crystal. I'll leave the crystal here for now. It'll be more interesting to conquer the entire island. Meanwhile, at the port, boom! The booming explosion at the port reverberated through the air, drawing everyone's attention. In a desperate act, the soldiers tried to capture the Straw Hat Pirates' ship to negotiate the release of the hostages. However, they were greeted by a frightening sight, a colossal three-headed monster emerging from the Black Pearl, spewing furious flames upon them. The resulting explosion echoed across the island, casting a mantle of fear over all present. Run, a monster! The soldiers screamed in panic, as they vainly tried to protect themselves from the relentless fire. Luffy, watching the scene from afar, couldn't help but smile amusedly. Looks like Choo Choo is really having fun, he commented. Panic and chaos ensued among the soldiers, each seeking shelter from the imminent threat. The entire town was in chaos, realizing that no one could stop the pirate crew. Beside Luffy, Shirahoshi looked sadly at the island of Luminarchy, her eyes filled with admiration for its beauty. Are we leaving already, Luffy-sama? The island is so beautiful, she lamented, her soft voice reflecting her sadness at leaving such a place. Luffy, with a confident look, assured the mermaid princess. Don't worry, Shira, this island will be ours, and you can enjoy it as much as you want when we come back. He already considered this place his, wanting to take it from Joker's hands. As the Straw Hat crew approached the Black Pearl, Choo Choo continued to repel anyone who tried to approach the ship. Luffy, using his king's haki aura, caused the remaining soldiers at the port to fall unconscious, ensuring a safe departure for his crew. With an excited look, Luffy announced the crew's next destination. Hey, let's go, we have an interesting place to go to. It's called Sky Island. The statement aroused surprise and curiosity among the crew members, who exchanged questioning glances. But without time to ask, everyone started boarding, while Luffy took a miniature ship from his safe for the ex-slaves who followed him to the port. Thus the Black Pearl set off from Luminarchy towards Jaya, as Luffy instructed Nami. The freed and grateful slaves entered a second ship that was towed by the Black Pearl, which was the ship Luffy took from the Goa Kingdom, and thought to use here until he saw what he would do with those people. While all the chaos was happening that night, in another part of the sea, crossing the Red Line, there was a country that everyone said was the country of fairies, where love infects all its population, and in a palace on a huge mountain, the atmosphere did not seem to represent the country. This country is Dressrosa, and on its opulent and imposing throne, Doflamingo sits enveloped in anger and irritation. His normally controlled and malicious expression is now marked by untamable fury. He had already heard of Luffy's looting in Luminarchy, and each word about the chaos unleashed by the Straw Hat only increases his discontent after losing the slaves and the auction treasure that he had not taken for months and was scheduled to take the gold the following week. That Mugiwara will pay for every act of insolence, Doflamingo growled, his teeth grinding in fury. Viola, watching from a safe distance, couldn't help but be stunned. She had never seen Doflamingo so furious, she had never seen anyone stand up to Doflamingo. She thought no one was bold enough for that, But this monkey D. Luffy didn't even care if Doflamingo had connections with Kaido. He thinks he can challenge my power and get away with it? I will show him the true power of a Shichibukai. He's full of himself just because he defeated Crocodile and Jinbei. Does he not fear Kaido or Jack? I won't even let Jack get to him first, Doflamingo declared, his voice laden with a deadly threat. He stood up, his posture exuding authority and danger. I'm heading to the beginning of the Grand Line. I will take care of this insolent pirate myself, Viola observed, her heart racing, wondering what would happen, while other members of Doflamingo's crew asked if they could accompany him. However, Doflamingo said he didn't need them. Doflamingo walked to the palace window and jumped out, casting his strings towards the clouds and pulling himself to fly through the sky towards the first half of the Grand Line. Chapter Skypia, third-person POV. Somewhere in sea, first half of Grand Line. After several days of sailing, the Black Pearl, along with a second ship filled with people who were slaves, found itself stationary in the calm waters near Jaya. The crew, accustomed to their captain's impulsive style, gathered on deck, curious about the sudden stop and their captain summoning the entire crew to discuss their plans. Nami, with an expression of perplexity and curiosity, turned to Luffy, who stood on the bow of the Black Pearl. The sea around them was a vast expanse of blue, calm and endless. Why have we stopped here, Luffy? She asked, with a hint of curiosity in her voice. Luffy, with his iconic straw hat firmly in place, slowly turned to the crew. His face was lit up with an enigmatic smile and eyes shining with excitement. There's something I need to say. We're no longer going to Jaya, he announced, his voice filled with intriguing certainty. Nojiko, with an expression of surprise, interrupted. We're not going? But we're so close, why change your mind now? Her voice reflected the confusion spreading among the crew. Luffy, enjoying everyone's attention, pulled out a small, mysterious object from his pocket and tossed it to Nami. Look at this and tell me where it points, he said. Nami, catching the eternal pose with a nimble movement, examined it closely. Her eyes widened in surprise. It's pointing up, she exclaimed. Luffy nodded, his smile widening even more. Exactly. Many have asked about the Sky Island in recent days. I decided it was time to reveal our true destination. A chorus of exclamations echoed across the deck. Usopp, with eyes shining with excitement, exclaimed, an island in the sky? That's amazing, Luffy! How are we going to get there? Zoro cast a challenging gaze toward the sky. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as I can continue my training to get stronger. But an island in the sky. That sounds like an interesting challenge, he murmured, a slight smile of anticipation appearing. Reiju, the voice of reason and experience, looked at Luffy with a slight smile. An island in the sky, huh? That sounds like a worthy adventure. I'm curious to see what awaits us, she said. Lami looked at her with arrogance. I thought you would be scared of such a thing. As the two argued, Hachi shouted excitedly, the captain always takes us to the most amazing places. I can't wait to see the sky. Robin, with her usual calm demeanor but a glint of curiosity in her eyes, asked softly, So, are we really going to this island now? Luffy looked at everyone and nodded. Yes, I even thought of going to Jaya. But the place is just a haven of weak pirates and we would only become some kind of celebrity there, as it would just be a place to beat up some extras who mess with us, so I decided not to enter the island now. Luffy explained. Chopper, with an expression of childlike curiosity, tilted his head to the side. Extras? What does that mean, Luffy? He asked, his voice filled with genuine confusion. So, we are going to the sky. How high? Kuina raised the question before Luffy could respond to Chopper. 10,000 meters. There's a phenomenon in these waters that makes ships rise known as knock-up stream, but we won't be following that route. And how do you plan to make the ship rise 10,000 meters? Vivi asked curiously. Luffy, with a confident smile, revealed his plan. With my Momoa no Mi, I can manipulate gravity and weight. I've improved my ability and now I can use two applications at the same time. I will take our ship to the sky, he explained, his voice full of pride in his recent progress. In recent days, as the team trained, Luffy improved the performance of his fruit and gained new benefits. Now he could set the applications at times and divide it into two categories, which made him extremely OP. He could put strength and speed at times each in a fight. Luffy could also simply shrink everyone down and fly with his wings to the sky. But that idea seemed too easy and without any adventure, while his crew could share the feeling of seeing the ship rise higher and higher. That's amazing, Captain, Beppo shouted excitedly. Luffy, pleased with his powers, said, Yes, with my enhanced Momoa no Mi, we can make the Black Pearl fly. And with Nami controlling Garuda's winds to propel the ship, we'll reach Sky Island in the blink of an eye, he explained, his words infusing new vigor into the crew as he continued. So, it's to Sky Island we go. Everyone get ready, declared Luffy, his voice resonating with authority and adventure. Yes, Captain, came the unanimous response from everyone. Activity buzzed on the Black Pearl, with the crew engaged in adjusting sails and ropes, optimizing the ship to better propel it upwards. Meanwhile, Luffy headed to the second ship, which they had been towing since Luminarchy. On board, the former slaves, now dressed in clothes provided by the ship of the Kingdom of Goa, eagerly awaited the next plan of these pirates who had saved them. With everyone noticing Luffy approaching in the air, they all gathered on the deck. Warn, you are no longer slaves, but we still need to take you to a safe place. Anywhere we leave you, you are subject to being captured. We're going to a very special place, and I can't leave you here. You need to come with us, began Luffy, his confident and calm tone conveying security. The looks of the former slaves varied between uncertainty and hope. One of them, a middle-aged man with the marks of a hard life, asked hesitantly, "Where will you take us, sir?" Luffy smiled. "To Sky Island. But for that, I need to shrink this ship and store it for a while. It will be a unique experience, but I promise you'll be safe." A young woman spoke timidly, "Sir, we trust you. You saved us and we are willing to follow wherever you lead." Luffy nodded, touched by the trust placed in him. "I will ensure your safety. It will be just for a few hours. Then, we will be in a place where the sky is the limit." Luffy then shrank the ship with everyone inside and placed them in a safe place, returning to the Black Pearl, where everyone looked prepared for the next journey. Back on the Black Pearl, the atmosphere was palpably excited. Shirahoshi, with eyes shining with adventure, couldn't contain her joy. "We're going to see Sky Island, Megalo," she exclaimed, hugging the shark who grunted in response, sharing her excitement. Vivi, with a contagious smile, joined the festive atmosphere. "It must be amazing to fly to the sky," she commented, observing the final preparations. Luffy, firmly positioning himself, focused on the Black Pearl. "Time to start," he announced confidently as he placed his hands on the deck of the ship. With deep concentration, he activated the power of his Moa Moa no Mi, reducing the weight of the ship to below, and doing the same with gravity. Almost immediately, the Black Pearl began to levitate over the waters, to the surprise and admiration of everyone on board. "Wow, the Black Pearl can even fly!" Yamato exclaimed, his eyes glowing with admiration and a touch of pride. Alvida, standing beside Luffy, watched the scene with a smile. "Ten's ship really never ceases to amaze us," she commented, admiring her husband's power. "Well, let's continue. Nami." Luffy turned to his navigator, who nodded. The ship was slowly rising, about meters above the sea. Nami released her wings and went under the ship, using her own hands to tilt it diagonally. She then moved to the back of the ship, positioning it so that its upward angle wouldn't affect the crew. "Let's first release the ship's nitro and Nami will do the rest." Luffy spoke and the ship gained momentum, taking off with the energy used behind the ship. As it flew, Nami released her tornadoes with her hands to propel the ship, gaining even more speed. Dory, standing next to Broggy, couldn't hide his excitement. "This is incredible, Broggy. I've never seen anything like it," he exclaimed, his eyes wide. Broggy, equally impressed, simply agreed, "Untrue, Dory. Our young captain always surprises us." Shirahoshi, clinging to Megalo, screamed with joy. "We're flying, Megalo, flying to the sky." The mermaid princess was clearly ecstatic with the experience. Zoro, watching the scene with his arms crossed, couldn't help but express his admiration. "Well, this is really amazing," he admitted, impressed by Luffy and Nami's abilities. Nojiko approached Nami, concerned. "Is everything all right, Nami? Can you control all this?" she asked, watching her sister's concentration. Nami, without losing focus, confidently replied, "Of course, Nojiko. I've faced bigger challenges before," said Nami, easily maintaining her power. "Clouds above," Beppo shouted as the ship invaded a massive quantity of clouds. "Point, these clouds are so big, this must be Sky Island," Luffy commented, noting its gigantic size, large enough to fit 3 or 4 islands. The ship entered the area, and all they could see was white, filled with clouds as they continued to ascend. The Black Pearl, after emerging from the sea of clouds, revealed a spectacular panorama that left everyone on board speechless. The sky was lit by a radiant sun, whose rays reflected off the clouds below, creating a spectacle of twinkling lights. The clouds, thick and soft, formed a vast white sea beneath the Black Pearl. "I'll remove all the effects from the ship, Nami, you can rest, and everyone prepare for the descent," Luffy announced before releasing the ship from the effects of his Akuma no Mi, and it began to fall. With a small thud on the clouds, the ship didn't sink but remained atop the clouds as if it were on the sea. Usopp, always ready for an adventure, couldn't contain his excitement. "Look at this place, everyone! It's like we're in a dream," he said, pointing to the white, undulating expanse of clouds below them. "Look at this place," Reiju said, quite fascinated by the location. "Incredible," murmured Lami, usually restrained in his emotions but clearly impressed with the scene before them. She looked around, absorbing the surreal landscape. Vivi, with a sparkle in her eyes, expressed her admiration. "Really, this place exists? It's like something out of a legend or a fairy tale," she said, her voice reflecting a mix of joy and astonishment. "Looks like cotton candy. Can you eat it?" Chopper shouted excitedly. "Let's move forward," Luffy announced. Then the Black Pearl finally moved forward, cutting through the clouds in the sea of clouds. As the crew was still admiring the environment, a structure began to appear on the horizon. "A gate?" Nami asked. "Aren't there someone there?" Yamato said. "An angel?" Usopp shouted, looking through a magnifying glass. "Must be a guard," Quina said, a bit perplexed. As the ship approached, an elderly woman with small wings on her back looked at them from in front of that welcoming gate. "Visitors? It's been a long time since we've seen any. This is Heaven's Gate. All visitors must pay 1 billion XTOL to enter Sky Island." "Billion?" Nami shouted in fury. "Calm down, Nami, it's not berries. This currency is worth thousands of times less than a berry," Luffy soothed her and turned to the lady at the gate. "Sorry, ma'am, but we don't plan to pay the fee since this island belongs to the Straw Hats," Luffy spoke with an arrogant tone, making the gatekeeper's eyes widen at what was about to happen. Luffy also knew what was going to happen. He didn't want to waste time in this place and quickly enter into conflict with Enel, as it would save time for his plans. Yamato looked up before everyone else as a lightning bolt started to fall towards the ship, so large it could destroy not just the ship but the entire gate. Luffy, anticipating this, simply smiled. "It seems we're about to start our fight, Enel," he said, seeing the lightning heading their way unconcernedly. Chapter Skypiea Third-Person POV Skypiea First Half of Grand Line. As the threatening attack approached the Black Pearl, illuminating everything, the crew panicked. Luffy raised his hand calmly, a vibrant flame emerging, a result of his Akuma no Mi powers, shooting skyward in a bright arc. The shot, so powerful, made the ship sink slightly in the cloud sea, sounding like a cannon. This flame was like when Luffy attacked Baroque Works outside Whiskey Peak. It shot up at high speed to meet Enel's lightning. Their clash, Luffy's chaos flame against Enel's lightning, was cataclysmic. The collision neutralized both attacks, creating a monumental shockwave, a spectacle of light and sound, violently rocking the Black Pearl, almost submerging it. Bo-wo-wo-wo, the explosion reverberated across Skypiea, a deafening detonation echoing through the skies, shaking the island. Surrounding clouds were lit by a blinding light, and the shockwave spread in all directions, reaching even the City of Angels. In the city, inhabitants looked up, stunned and alarmed. "What is that?" A resident with small wings on his back exclaimed in shock. "God, Enel is angry," another shouted, voice trembling with fear. "What was that explosion?" a third asked, as the city was enveloped in shadows by the huge smoke cloud. The City of Angels trembled, structures swaying from the impact, people crowding the streets, looking up in a mix of fear and fascination. The sky battle between Luffy and Enel was just beginning, and nobody knew what was happening with the impact between flames, rocks and lightning, but everyone in Skypiea felt they were about to witness an epic event. Beyond the sky, the explosion even echoed in the sea below, making many look up with curiosity while sailing. Meanwhile, aboard the Black Pearl, Luffy's crew finally reacted to the colossal explosion. Each member reacted with a mix of shock and readiness. Chopper let out a sharp scream, "Sa!" hiding behind a cannon, his eyes wide with fear. Karoo, Vivi's loyal duck, clucked frantically, clearly disturbed by the sudden boom and ensuing turmoil as Vivi ran after him. Nojiko, with a worried expression, quickly turned to Luffy. "Luffy, what the heck was that?" she demanded, seeking answers about the source of the frightening explosion. Zoro, always ready for battle, immediately grabbed his swords, bracing for any imminent threat. "An enemy?" he questioned aloud. Yamato, cautious, approached Luffy, asking seriously, "Luffy, who is this? Why did he attack us?" Her expression was of someone ready to face any danger, anticipating a possible confrontation. "Ah, Enel is furious." The old lady with wings at the gate didn't care about Luffy anymore, as she jumped into a boat and began to row away with all her strength. Ignoring the old lady, Luffy turned to his crew before looking up again. "'Tis self-proclaimed god of this place, his name is Enel," Luffy said, looking at the destruction with solemn eyes. A slight trace of disdain in his words. Hachi couldn't hide his nervousness. "Ni. A god?" he exclaimed, anxiety evident in his voice. Nami approached Luffy with a questioning expression. "But you don't seem to believe he's really a god, do you?" she inquired, seeking to better understand the situation. Luffy replied with an ironic smile. "He's not a god. Just a guy with the logia of thunder, powerful, but far from a god as he claims. He's more like an arrogant mayor," Luffy explained, clearly belittling the attacker. As he finished, another lightning bolt came from the sky, and Luffy responded with another shot of his flames. Boom! Luffy. The Thunder Logia is a disaster category fruit, Robin exclaimed, alarmed. "It's okay, we can handle it. It's powerful, but I'll deal with that guy," Luffy decided, turning to Yamato. "Yamato, besides me, you might be the only one who can handle his lightning on our ship. Can you stay here to protect it?" he asked. He could let Yamato handle it, but as the captain and someone who watched the original work, would he leave dealing with the legendary Enel to a third party? Of course not. "Yes, Luffy, I can do that," Yamato replied, and Luffy nodded. "Nami and Hugo, you want to come along to use your powers? There are some priests you can handle," Luffy said, knowing Enel could hear every word, but not caring. Nami and Hugo agreed. "So I want to fight too." Zoro immediately wanted to join. "Zoro, you should train with this lightning. The world's greatest swordsman can even cut lightning," Luffy suggested, and Zoro agreed after some thought. "I think you're right," he said. "So guess we're useless here," Reiju commented. "We're just spectators," Lami remarked. "Luffy-sama, stay safe," Shirahoshi said worriedly. "It's going to be fine. I'll go ahead, you catch up later. The rest can go to the City of Angels and enjoy the place." "I can handle Enel," Luffy said before releasing a speed 50 times faster and disappeared, practically flying while jumping in the air with Geppo. Luffy immediately passed the City of Angels, watching people frightened by Enel's lightning falling, while Luffy exploded them with his flames. In the air, lightning bolts started falling towards him. He smiled, dodging them while jumping. Mid-flight, Luffy transformed his body into flames to disintegrate approaching lightning. Each threatening bolt was met with a Soru, to move at almost imperceptible speed, appearing meters ahead in the air. Always a step ahead. Lightning! With a bolt cutting the sky towards him, Luffy dodged at the last second with an Soru, laughing loudly with the thrill of the chase. Soru again, another bolt tried to hit him, but Luffy, with a mix of grace and power, leapt sideways, easily dodging. Lightning! A third bolt followed a similar pattern, but Luffy, now anticipating the movement, lunged forward, avoiding the impact. Soru each Tensoru was an aerial ballet, a dance of quick reflexes and calculated movements. Lightning, Soru lightning, Soru lightning, Soru lightning, Soru lightning, Soru laughing euphorically. Luffy shouted to the sky, "This is so much fun, Enel. But I have to admit, the speed of lightning is impressive. Even with my increased speed, I still need Soru to keep safe." The lightning continued to strike, each one a challenge met with laughter and evasion, a dangerous game only he could play. He was a near mythical figure, a pirate challenging a god dancing among the sky's lightning bolts. Lightning! Soru Luffy looked at his destination, an island with a huge tree and the golden bell. This is Skypia's main area and one of its most sacred. Known as Upper Yard, it's the largest land area in Skypia. Who would have thought this island belonged to the lower sea, but was raised here by the knock-up stream? Luffy murmured quietly as he dodged another lightning strike. His eyes scanning the area covered by a dense forest with diverse geography, including ancient ruins, lakes, and mountains. Upper Yard is also the site of the Golden City, Shandora. Becoming bored with Enel's incessant attacks, Luffy decided to confront the self-proclaimed god directly. With a challenging smile, he firmly positioned himself in the air, creating wings on his back. "Sinel, you cowardly fool, will you keep hiding, launching these weak lightning strikes? Are you such a weak god?" Luffy changed his speed ability to sound in mid-air, his voice heard throughout the islands. "With this, I'm sure Enel won't stay put. He's too proud to stay in his place after everyone hears this," Luffy reasoned. And he was right. Enel's response was immediate, with lightning emerging from a temple in the forest, known as God's Shrine. The bolt moved toward Luffy in the air but stopped meters away while he used his feet to stay airborne with Geppo. Enel appeared in front of him just as Luffy imagined, with his large ears, drums on his back, and iconic look. Enel looked at Luffy with a frown, his sharp, blade-like eyes fixed on Luffy, frowning in a mix of interest and disdain. The sudden appearance of the Black Pearl, a ship from the lower sea in his heavenly kingdom, initially piqued his curiosity. However, the mortal's arrogance, openly declaring Skypiea now belonged to the Straw Hats, quickly turned Enel's curiosity into fury. With an impetuous movement, Enel conjured a devastating lightning bolt, aiming to annihilate Luffy and his ship in one stroke. Electricity buzzed in the air, charged with lethal intent. But to his surprise, Luffy not only withstood but also confronted the lightning. Enel watched, almost in disbelief, as his attack was interrupted by flames produced by the pirate, and successfully combated by the man in front of him. Luffy's ability to deal with the lightning seemed beyond luck, but as he tried to destroy the ship, the lightning was effortlessly stopped by this man in front. It was a direct challenge to Enel's authority and power. But what enraged him even more was this pirate openly saying he wasn't a god and even calling him a mayor, affront to his divine existence. As the pirate approached, even launching lightning at him in the air, Enel tried to destroy the ship. A man attempted to cut his lightning but was struck, and when he thought he would destroy the mortal's companions, his lightning was repelled by a horned woman. Enel's frustrations only increased as this man seemed to enjoy evading his attacks, and the peak of his wrath came when he loudly declared for the entire island that he was a coward and questioned his god status. Enel immediately flew toward him, teeth clenched at the mocking look of the pirate. Facing Luffy with a furious glare, Enel roared, "Who? You foolish mortal! I will destroy you." Luffy, unflappable and with a defiant smile, responded disdainfully, "Oh, I'd like to see that, little lightning. Your fruit is powerful, but that makes you nothing more than a fool with some power." Luffy's words echoed through the air, laden with audacity. The battle between the captain of the Straw Hats and the self-proclaimed god of Skypiea was about to unfold shortly after Luffy arrived in this realm. Chapter: Skypiea. Third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. Luffy stared directly at Enel, his eyes shining with a mix of audacity and curiosity. "Oh, are you the god of this place?" he asked, an excited smile lighting up his face, as if he were in front of prey, since Luffy looked like a ruffian. Enel, rising with the authority of an angry god, gazed at Luffy with a penetrating and disdainful look. "Who are you, mortal, and how dare you invade my sacred domains?" "The domains of a god," he declared, his voice laden with divine arrogance. "What nonsense! You're not a god, and you know it." Luffy began to respond, but before he could finish, Enel interrupted, striking his drums with theatrical fury. In response, a lightning bolt emerged, cutting the air towards the pirate captain. Without missing a beat, Luffy counterattacked, launching a fireball towards the lightning. The collision of the two elements was catastrophic, creating a resounding explosion that echoed throughout the island. Fire and lightning collided in the air, weaving a spectacle of light and sound, a dangerous dance of immense powers. Boom! Enel, watching the scene with a mix of surprise and irritation, couldn't help but wonder, how can a mortal have so much power? Luffy's ability to face his attack was something he hadn't anticipated. Luffy, undaunted, responded confidently, "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the man who will dominate the seas. Taking care of a fool with the Logia of Thunder should be easy for me." He crossed his arms, facing Enel with an implicit challenge in his gaze. Enel growled, rage boiling within him. "What nonsense! You, coming from an inferior kingdom, cannot compare to a god." His voice was a thunder of disdain and wounded pride. What a strange complex to self-proclaim as god, Luffy thought, already getting bored of hearing such things. "Here's the thing, Enel. You're a god as you say, but let me tell you what I am then." Luffy's fist darkened a bit after those words. "I am a god slayer." He finished with a smile and disappeared from the place. Before Enel could react, Luffy was in front of him. Enel, even a bit surprised, barely had time to process Luffy's sudden presence in front of him. But even with that, he didn't show much concern, expecting his body to become lightning while that strange black fist approached him. However, when Luffy delivered a powerful punch to his stomach, Enel's expression instantly changed as he felt his body being touched. The impact of the blow was so strong that he felt his belly sink with the force, leaving him dazed at how he could feel pain after years without it, and how that stranger could do this. The next moment, a cry of pain escaped from Enel's lips. He disappeared from his original position, propelled by Luffy's powerful punch. His body flew through the air and crashed into the island's ground with devastating force. The impact was so intense that it shook the surrounding area, causing great destruction. The trees in the forest below were uprooted, and the ground trembled under the force of the impact. Broken branches and scattered leaves created a scene of chaos. Luffy's punch not only surprised Enel, but also left a visible mark on the landscape of the island, demonstrating the extraordinary power of the Straw Hat Captain. Crack! Enel, emerging from the cloud of dust, was clearly confused and shaken. How? How is this possible? He exclaimed, trying to comprehend how he had been hit. He held his stomach, trying to catch his breath. Even though he couldn't keep up with Luffy's speed, he believed he could have avoided the blow. Luffy, facing Enel with a defiant expression, confidently replied, "How? I already told you, I'm a godslayer." Luffy's words were as arrogant as those Enel had uttered earlier. As he spoke, wings began to emerge on his back, and his skin started to change color. Luffy had activated Phase 2 of his Akuma no Mi. What is this? Enel was astonished. First, he had to accept that Luffy was stronger than any opponent he had ever faced, capable of rivaling his power. Second, he was shocked to have been physically touched and wounded, spitting blood after the punch. And now, the third and most surprising aspect, Luffy was not only growing wings larger than any other sky inhabitants, but he was also undergoing a transformation that Enel had never seen before. As Enel struggled to recover on the ground, Luffy's transformation became increasingly impressive. Horns began to emerge from his head, sinister and imposing. Flames enveloped his body, dancing around him as if they had a life of their own, painting a fierce and powerful aura. His eyes shone with increasing intensity, reflecting the strength and determination of a true god hunter. To Enel, watching from his vulnerable position, Luffy was no longer just a pirate, he seemed like a demon, a supernatural being capable of challenging and destroying gods. With the transformation to level 2 completed, Luffy did not hesitate. He launched a blast of flames towards Enel still on the ground. Luffy knew that this attack would not be enough to defeat a Logia user, but it was a demonstration of his overwhelming power, and also a chance to enjoy the chaos of the explosions. The flames, dubbed Chaos Flames, erupted with wild ferocity, engulfing the surrounding forest and disintegrating everything in their path. The explosions that followed were so bright and intense that they eclipsed the sun's light. For a moment, all of Skypiea was plunged into darkness, only to be illuminated again by the burning flames of Ifrit. The flames painted the sky in shades of amethyst, a daunting spectacle that made the entire island tremble. Boom! The sound of the explosion echoed throughout Skypiea, a testament to Luffy's devastating power. As the flames consumed the forest and lit up the sky, Luffy remained motionless, a powerful and unshakable figure amidst the chaos he had created. Boom! 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 The consecutive explosions shook all the islands of Skypiea. Even the great golden bell located at the top of the upper yard island swayed, emitting a sound that reverberated through the air. "What's happening?" exclaimed a Shandy warrior, his eyes wide in shock as he watched the purple explosions in the sky. He and his companions, dressed in tribal attire and holding exotic weapons, were clearly frightened and fascinated. Yotsubane, one of the wisest among them, frowned. "I'm not sure, but it seems like someone is facing Enel." "How is that possible?" another warrior shouted, gripping his spear tightly as the ground trembled under his feet. Wiper, one of the most resolute warriors, watched with a mix of respect and disbelief. "And I don't know, but look at the power of this person. This definitely does not come from our realm." A warrior beside him, with a look of admiration, questioned, "Could it have come from the Blue Sea? Is there enough power there to face a god?" Meanwhile, at some distance, Gonfall listened to the explosions and watched the purple flames consuming the forest. His eyes reflected a mix of concern and amazement. What is this?" he murmured, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what he was witnessing. The confusion and astonishment were evident among the inhabitants of Skypiea. While some trembled with fear, others showed curiosity and even hope. Whatever was happening, it was clear that something extraordinary was occurring, something that would change the established power in the realm of the sky. Luffy in the air looked at the forest being devastated on that side, the flames consuming everything in the area, creating a dance of amethyst colors with the greens of the forest leaves. At that time, Nami and Hugo appeared beside the transformed Luffy. "Oh Luffy, are you okay?" Nami asked. "I am, Nami. You have some opponents on that side." He spoke with his voice distorted by the transformation, and pointed towards Enel's temple, where his priests were that they could fight against. "We're on it, Captain," Hugo responded firmly. He and Nami quickly headed to the location indicated by Luffy. In the midst of the explosion caused by Luffy and his flames, a scream of hatred erupted. It was Enel, emerging among the lightning, his figure materializing with an aura of fury. "You damned mortal! he yelled, visibly enraged, even though he was still impressed by Luffy's transformation. Luffy, looking at Enel with a playful glint, retorted with a hint of mockery. "Stop crying, Enel. You weren't even affected by the explosions." He knew that the flames without Haki didn't affect the enemy, as he had a Logia after all. However, the fact that the self-proclaimed god was frustrated was making for quite a show. Enel was so angry at feeling powerless. Even though the attacks didn't hurt him, he hadn't been able to react to Luffy's power, and this impotence was evident in his rage. In Skypiea, there might not be armament Haki, but there is something called mantra, a name the inhabitants here have given to observation Haki. Some are born with this power, the power called mantra here, which can predict attacks, find people, and even hear and see everything that happens in real time. In Enel's case, his fruit seems to further enhance its range, making him aware of everything happening in the sky. Enel was frustrated that even with his power and skill, he might predict Luffy's attacks, but he couldn't do anything against them, as the range of the explosions and even their speed was something he couldn't act against. Enel, without responding to Luffy's comment, quickly took action. With a swift movement he struck his drums, unleashing a devastating attack. "Volts!" he shouted, launching a powerful lightning bolt straight up into the sky, engulfing Luffy in his electric fury. "This is what happens when you think you can face a god," Enel said, arrogance coloring his voice. Despite the blood on his face and the surprise at this man from the blue sea, he maintained his pose, watching his lightning disappear into the air. Then, to his astonishment, a familiar voice sounded by his side. "That was a nice attack. Are you using your full strength against me?" "I'm surprised by that." It was Luffy, standing calmly beside Enel with no visible scratch. His flames, still dancing on his transformed body in Phase 2, made him look like a true monster. Enel stared at Luffy, the horned demon, with a mix of horror and disbelief. How had that man escaped his powerful attack and appeared by his side without him noticing? Enel's expression clearly showed his confusion and growing fear. Luffy, on the other hand, remained calm and confident, an imposing figure before the self-proclaimed god. Enel's face twisted into a bizarrely comical expression. His eyes widened in shock, his nose running, and his mouth opening in a huge O of disbelief. He stared at Luffy, unable to comprehend how the stranger had dodged his attack and appeared by his side. Luffy couldn't contain a laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha. Your expression is hilarious, Enel, but I'm here to defeat you once and for all," he said, still laughing. The scene before him reminded Luffy of something he had seen in a cartoon, but now it was happening in real life, right before his eyes. Enel, quickly recovering from the initial shock, tried to distance himself from Luffy, aware of the imminent danger. However, Luffy was faster. With an agile movement he delivered a powerful punch to Enel's face, infused with a bit of Haki. The impact of the blow was so strong that it sent the god of Skypiea flying through the air. Enel traversed the landscape, breaking the ground as his body tried to resist the force of the attack. The sound of the impact was deafening amidst the burning forest. Crack! Ah! The burn. Chapter 168. Skypiea. 04. Third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. The area around was in turmoil, with flames licking at the trees and a thick curtain of smoke rising into the sky. Beneath the ground, where Enel had been buried by the impact of Luffy's punch, there was a sudden explosion. A bolt of lightning shot upwards, and Enel emerged from the rubble, visibly more injured. His face was bloody, and one of his eyes was purple, clearly marked by Luffy's strike. Enel stared at Luffy, who was still on the ground in the same place he had attacked him, with an expression of pure hatred. Without saying a word, he unleashed a series of lightning attacks towards Luffy. The lightning bolts flew towards Luffy, who looked at them with an expression of amusement. He began to dodge the attacks while the ground exploded in debris around him, reminiscent of the fight between Nika and Kaido, where the original Luffy launched the lightning bolts with his own hands from the sky against the mighty Yonkou. The fight between Luffy and Enel created spectacular explosions all over the island, a true show of lights and energy. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Black Pearl was approaching the City of Angels. The people in the city were scared, running from one side to the other, trying to take shelter. They looked at the fight in the distance, watching the spectacle of light created by the two powerful elements in conflict. Fear was etched in their eyes, and they sought refuge as the battle between Luffy and Enel continued, marking the sky of Skypiea with their fury and power with each explosion between the two elements. In the City of Angels, chaos reigned as the battle between Luffy and Enel intensified. The normally quiet streets were now filled with panicked inhabitants. "The god Enel is furious. We have to protect ourselves," shouted one of the residents, his voice trembling with fear as he ran, seeking refuge. "Let's run." "We don't want to be destroyed by him," exclaimed another, pushing a cart with hastily packed belongings. "Let's run, Mom!" A child held the hand of his mother, both running among the desperate crowd. Men, women, and children of all ages hurried through the streets, some seeking shelter in their homes, others opting to leave the city entirely. Aboard the Black Pearl, which was approaching the city, Vivi watched the scene with concern. "They seem really scared," she commented, observing the commotion below. Nojiko beside her added, "Bonai, they haven't even noticed us. They are more worried about hiding in their homes or even leaving the city." Suddenly, a deafening sound cut through the air. Boom! The explosion came from afar, a powerful reminder of the fierce battle that was happening at that moment. The shockwaves could be felt even in the city, causing windows to tremble and some weaker structures to sway. The inhabitants of Skypiea looked up at the sky, their faces marked by fear and desperation, as they witnessed the clash between two unimaginable powers. "But Luffy is also going overboard," Kuina grumbled, hearing the explosions in the distance. She looked at the sky, where the battle between Luffy and NL created distant thunders. "He's fighting against a user of the Logia Fruit of Thunder," Robin commented, emphasizing the magnitude of the opposing power the captain was facing. "Boom!" Alvida, with a look of relief, added, "At least that god has stopped launching those lightning bolts at us." She recalled how lightning bolts constantly fell on the ship to destroy them as soon as Luffy flew away. Kuina looked at Zoro, who was lying on the ground, his body marked by burns while some lightning appeared around him. "Good for Zoro," she said, recalling when he tried to cut one of the lightning bolts in half but ended up being hit without managing to cut the bolt as he wanted. Despite the swordsman's talk of cutting the lightning, Yamato managed to repel Enel's power with his haki-coated weapon right after. "Boom! Next time I'll manage to cut the lightning," Zoro murmured, his voice low but full of determination despite his injuries. "Stop talking," Chopper reprimanded, a little irritated with Zoro's recklessness, while tending to the swordsman's wounds. He worked meticulously, bandaging the burns. Hachi, visibly scared by the situation, looked at the others. "Anyway, what are we going to do now?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Yamato assumed the posture of a confident leader. "We'll wait for Luffy to finish his fight. Nami and Hugo are with him, so everything will be fine. We can explore the city," she said with the calm of a vice captain. Shira Hoshi, excited and oblivious to the gravity of the situation, jumped with enthusiasm. "Yay, let's explore the City of Angels!" she shouted, confident that Luffy would emerge victorious, regardless of the challenge he faced. Boom, 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 boom. The explosions continued to echo through the sky, a symphony of chaos that made the island's inhabitants wonder what was happening and how someone could confront the god of the sky. In the temple, the priests Om, Satori, Shura, and Gadatsu watched the battle with expressions loaded with concern. "What's happening?" murmured Om, gripping his sword tightly. "Someone is fighting against Inel-sama!" exclaimed Satori, his eyes wide with surprise. "He just left the temple and went to face whoever had the courage for it," commented Shura, with a hint of arrogance in his voice. "Should we go help?" Gadatsu suggested, looking at the other priests. Before they could make a decision, something unexpected happened. A shadow emerged from the forest, hitting the temple walls with a violent explosion. "Sa!" The screams of Enel's women resonated as they began to flee in panic. Hey, what's this?" Satori exclaimed, shielding his face from the dust raised by the explosion. The priests looked at each other, realizing the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Not just with their god, but something began happening to them too. As the smoke began to dissipate, the immense figure of Nola, the giant snake, became visible. She was impaled on the temple, her massive body sinking into the structure. "This is Nola!" Om exclaimed, surprised and confused by the unexpected appearance of the snake. "What's happening?" murmured one of the priests, still trying to understand the situation. But before they could react, two figures emerged from where Nola had been launched. A man covered in glowing rocks and a woman with orange hair, with luminous green lines running through her body and large white wings on her back, positioned themselves in front of the four priests. Who are you?" one of the priests shouted, clearly surprised and frightened by the sudden appearance. With a determined expression, Nami replied while floating in the air. "We're the Straw Hat Pirates. We've come from the sea below, and our captain has given us a mission to end any soldier of that false god." "Are you them, false god? How dare you commit heresy against Enel-sama?" one of the priests retorted, his voice trembling with anger. Hugo, already on the ground and ready for combat, spoke confidently. "Looks like they are. Let's finish this quickly." Nami nodded, sharing Hugo's enthusiasm. Yes, I want to enjoy this island, and map it as soon as possible. So let's finish this, she declared, taking the lead to initiate the attack. The priests prepared to confront the invaders, each assuming a combat stance. But before the priests could process the attack in front of them, they were quickly overwhelmed by a storm of attacks. Hurricanes arose within the temple, created by powerful winds and giant claws that tore through the air. Rocks rose from the ground, hurled with brutal force. The priests, caught off guard, barely had time to react to the surprise attacks. Crack! KKKK! The temple of Enel began to crumble under the relentless assault. Meanwhile, moments before, Enel, consumed by rage, intensified his attack against Luffy. Lightning and the direct attack until Thor rained down on Luffy, who was on the ground. Lightning boom, crack, the sounds of explosions and lightning filled the air. Luffy, for his part, dodged each one, testing the limits of his speed, now faster than the speed of lightning itself. In a swift movement, Luffy kicked the ground, causing an explosion that launched him directly towards Enel in the air. Enel, realizing Luffy's approach, fired a lightning bolt directly at him. Luffy, without hesitation, countered with a powerful flame, flapping his wings to gain altitude and confront Enel face to face. The clash of the two powers, flames and lightning, created a spectacle of light and sound, a duel of giants in the sky of Skypiea once again. Enel, enveloped in lightning, hurled himself at Luffy with divine fury. Luffy, in his transformed form, radiated flames that danced around him, an aura of power and challenge. Each of Enel's movements was like lightning, fast and lethal, but Luffy met him at every turn, his agility and enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge and counterattack with equal ferocity. Enel's lightning bolts cut through the sky, an electric network incessantly seeking its target. Luffy, on the other hand, moved with the grace of a flame, weaving through and piercing the electrical storm. Every time Luffy counterattacked, flames clashed against lightning, creating explosions that resonated throughout the island. Enel, despite his divine nature, was beginning to feel the pressure of the confrontation. To him, this stranger claiming to be Monkey D. Luffy and Emperor of the Sea, a mere arrogant mortal, was now challenging a god. Surprising and frustrating him, he increased the intensity of his attacks, with denser and faster lightning bolts sprouting from his hands. Luffy, however, did not back down. He advanced against the storm, his flames growing in intensity. With every dodged blow and blocked attack, Luffy drew closer to Enel, decreasing the distance between them. At one moment, Luffy got close to Enel despite his attempts to distance himself using his body as a lightning bolt, but Luffy kicked him from behind, sending him crashing down to the island's ground again like a meteor. Again? Enel shouted in pain as his body collided once more with the earth. Crack! He emerged from the wreckage, frustrated with the pain in his back, when suddenly a sound caught his attention and he realized with his mantra that his temple was being destroyed. He quickly flew to the sky and saw the chaos unfolding at his place of residence. What is this? He exclaimed, feeling the presence of two unknown individuals attacking his sacred place. He recognized them as allies of the stranger he was facing, infuriating him even more. Enel's fury was immediate. How dare they? He roared, seeing his priests being overwhelmed in combat. In a fit of rage, he diverted his attention from Luffy and launched a powerful lightning bolt towards the temple. This oversight proved fatal as Luffy seized the opportunity to attack. With a swift charge, Luffy appeared beside Enel in the air and hit Enel with a haki-charged punch stronger than the previous attacks, sending the self-proclaimed god crashing to the ground again, blood escaping from his mouth. In the temple, Enel's lightning bolt headed towards Nami and Hugo. They had already been warned by Luffy about the possibility of such an attack and were prepared. Both unleashed their transformations. Nami enveloped herself in a gigantic hurricane that shook the entire island, and Hugo transformed into a colossal figure, rising like a mountain from the ground. Boom! Enel's lightning bolt hit them, but the resistance they had acquired in their transformed forms protected them, making the attack not affect them on a large scale. Roar, emitting powerful roars, Nami and Hugo demonstrated total control over their new and imposing forms. One of the priests, still conscious, shouted in alarm at seeing the colossal figures above them. When Titan Hugo took a step beside the priests, the mere impact of his leg was enough to send them flying, showing the immense power now at play in the battle. "We must get out of here! They are monsters!" shouted another priest, panic in his voice. But before they could flee, Nami acted quickly, releasing a powerful gust of wind that knocked out all the remaining priests, sending them falling 300 meters away. "This lightning hurt a little," Nami complained, feeling the effect of Enel's attack. Her body was enveloped in the hurricane she had created, a demonstration of the control she now possessed over her devil fruit. Yes, but it wasn't serious. And now we have better control of our fruits, responded Hugo, maintaining the imposing expression of his Titan form. Nami had trained in the use of her fruit in the Alabarna Desert, along with Yamato, learning to control her transformed form. She knew that the transformations of the Incans could be uncontrolled at first, but now felt she had better mastery over her own. Similarly, Hugo had reached a new level of control after the chaos in the desert. They remembered Luffy's words, instructing them to remain in their transformed forms as long as they could, to thus achieve true control of their powers. It was a crucial step to becoming accustomed to their abilities, which had not yet reached their highest level. Meanwhile, Enel, lying on the ground and spitting blood, realized the grave mistake he had made by ignoring Luffy to attack the invaders of his temple. He stopped his coughing and looked towards where he had launched the lightning bolts, alarmed by the colossal roars coming from there. His eyes widened at the sight of the giants emerging, a scene that defied his understanding of the world. "What's happening?" exclaimed Enel, shocked and confused by the turn of events. Chapter 169, Skypiea 05. Third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. The Shandies watched with astonishment and admiration the colossal transformations of Nami and Hugo. Their expressions varied between disbelief and reverence in the face of the display of power that defied everything they knew. "What are these creatures?" exclaimed one of the warriors, his eyes wide as he observed the immense figure of Hugo rising like a mountain and creating small tremors as he stepped on the ground. The warrior held his weapon firmly, but his hand trembled slightly in the face of the power he saw. "This is incredible," murmured another warrior, a mix of fear and fascination in her voice. She had never seen anything like the hurricane controlled by Nami, which seemed to have a life of its own, spinning and roaring with stormy force. Wiper, a leader among the Shandies, watched closely, trying to understand the implications of those transformations. "They are some kind of demon," he said, more to himself than to the others. "And they are also attacking Enel." The temple where Enel was located was now devastated. Some Shandi children, hidden behind their parents, peaked with curiosity and fear. They whispered among themselves, scared by the sight of the giants. Beyond the Shandi warriors, the inhabitants of the City of Angels witnessed the two gigantic figures emerging in the center of the island at a distance, visible even from afar. The population of the city stopped, the streets full of people looking up at the sky, agape at the sight of the colossal creatures. "What are those things?" shouted a man, pointing in the direction of the distant giant figures. His voice trembled as much as his hands. "Mommy, look, they're giants!" exclaimed a child, pointing with a mix of fear and fascination. "Could they be enemies of God, Enel?" asked a woman, her voice laden with worry. The uncertainty about the intentions of the giant creatures added a layer of tension to the existing fear, in addition to Enel fighting someone in another corner of the island. Could they be enemies of God? And what's going to happen to us? "Should we leave here and get away? It's not safe," the voices repeated in the city. Meanwhile, the crew had already disembarked and was walking against the crowd of the city. They walked calmly as if they were on vacation. "What is this?" Shirahoshi asked, picking up an object from a store. While the seller hid behind the counter trembling, he looked at the mermaid, unbelieving that she wanted to buy a shell in the midst of that chaos. "A sharky." Megalo arrived next, curious. "Grrr." Laboon was also curious. "Karoo? What are you doing, Karoo?" Vivi asked her curious duck. "Wolf, wolf." All the animals were exploring the city with the members while looking at everything curiously. Elsewhere, Ganfall, the former god of Skypiea, approached the epicenter of chaos mounted on his loyal winged horse, Pierre. His eyes widened in alarm as he watched the scene below. The forest was on fire, the flames consuming the trees with the relentless veracity of one side where Enel was. While two gigantic creatures dominated the scene at Enel's temple, Ganfall's expression was a mix of concern and disbelief. "What is happening here? Who are these monsters and the person who is fighting Enel?" he murmured to himself, his voice almost lost in the noise of the battle. His gaze was fixed on the flames, the giant creatures, and the ruined temple, looking for clues that could explain the turmoil and destruction that had taken over Skypiea. Luffy, watching from above, noticed Enel fallen on the ground, clearly dazed and confused by the transformations of icons unfolding before him. The sight of Enel, a being who proclaimed himself a god, stunned and vulnerable, was amusing to Luffy. With an intense glint in his eyes, Luffy focused on Enel. Without hesitation, Luffy propelled himself downward, turning into a true human meteor as his body enveloped in flames, leaving a luminous trail in his path. Enel, still on the ground, raised his eyes just in time to see the flaming figure of Luffy approaching rapidly. Fear and surprise were evident on his face, an indication that his shell of superiority was crumbling. Luffy knew he couldn't hurt him with that, but he still wanted to play in the fight, while not hitting the Logia with haki. Luffy went straight to where Enel was and exploded the entire area with the force of his body. The entire area around exploded, cracking a significant part of the forest, and even causing the island to tremble slightly. Enel emerged soon after with lightning, but Luffy appeared right behind him with an amethyst glow, punching the god once more. "Why can he hurt me?" he shouted in even more pain. He was quite battered by the situation, having received blows after blows and not hurting the enemy once. Angry, he appeared in front of Luffy, who was standing in the place where he hit Enel, and the god used his maximum force. 200 million volts, he shouted, and Luffy was covered by a devastating lightning bolt, destroying everything in its path and disintegrating with the force of the attack. "It's a beautiful strike," a voice emerged when Enel seemed sure he had hit Luffy this time, but as soon as everything calmed down, Luffy appeared in the middle of the devastated field without backing down an inch while staring at Enel with a playful look. His form in phase plus times his defense made his body withstand the attack, while his body was enveloped not only by flames, but also by lightning that tried to electrocute him. "How?" he asked, dazed, while Luffy punched him once again. Boom! Enel flew to the ground, devastating a part of the forest. I can't lose here." Enel roared. He was bleeding, desperate and aware of his imminent defeat, then decided to play his last card. With a wild look of determination, he gathered his strength and flew into the sky, preparing to release an attack that could destroy the entire island and everyone on it. "I won't lose, so I'll use my final attack to destroy you along with everyone," Enel shouted, his voice echoing through the sky. "Ragu!" The clouds above him began to stir, forming a gigantic sphere of electrical energy, a sign of the devastating power that was about to be unleashed. Luffy, watching from below, immediately realized the gravity of the situation. "Tis. So he intends to release all his power," Luffy said in a carefree tone. The entire sun in Skypiea was covered by dark clouds, forming a darkness for all who only had Luffy's flames and Enel's lightning to light up the kingdom. People panicked, wondering what Enel was trying to do, until a ball began to appear above Luffy for all observers. "Luffy, what does he intend?" Garuda Nami asked a little far away, looking at Luffy. "It's okay, I can handle this," Luffy spoke. Meanwhile, Enel, floating in the sky, looked angrily after Luffy's words. "He can handle this? I'll show the power of a god." He smiled malevolently, believing his final attack would ensure his victory. Killing this inferior mortal. The sphere began to grow by the moment in front of him. It had increased to a size that could say it was a small blue and electric sun. Everyone was panicking, whether Shandies, the inhabitants of the City of Angels, and Ganfall trying to dodge the lightning in the sky. "It looks like things are serious," Yamato admitted in the city. "Luffy can handle this," Nojiko spoke confidently. "I hope he doesn't overdo it," Queen murmured. "How scary," Usopp shouted, a little afraid of that, hugging Beppo, who was also looking at it with a desperate tone. Witnessing the magnitude of Enel's power, Luffy realized that only his maximum level of strength would be sufficient to repel that. He decided to initiate his transformation to Phase, the most powerful and destructive form of the Icon no Mi, Chaos Ifrit. Luffy began to transform as intense and violent flames began to form around him. A pillar of purple fire exploded, rivaling the brightness of Enel's sphere, who looked a bit dazed at this development. As the flames calmed down, Luffy's final transformation was revealed. He was now a colossal figure, a true Drake, with burned skin, amethyst armor and curved horns. The flames vibrated on his gigantic body, now 50 meters tall. His presence was as imposing as an ancient demon, emanating a power that seemed capable of being a unique force of nature. Luffy, in his Ifrit form, stomped on the ground and roared loudly. "Roar! What? He can also transform into one of those creatures?" Enel questioned from above with a surprised look. "Let's see who has the most devastating attack, Enel," Luffy thought, looking at the sphere in the sky. The demon made of purple flames did not go unnoticed. Everyone looked at it in surprise, as a third creature appeared on the island and was about to face the god of Skypiea in his most powerful strike. Luffy knew he was ready to face Enel's devastating attack. With absolute control over the element of fire, Luffy prepared to launch a counterattack capable of destroying Enel's threat. The black, now colossal wings that manifested on his back rose as he raised both hands, concentrating his flames in them. The purple flame surrounding him began to concentrate between his hands, swirling and coalescing into a sphere growing from a small form to something much more immense. The flames, fueled by Luffy's strength and determination, grew in size and intensity, forming a burning sphere that rivaled the thunder sphere in the sky above. The fire sphere became a manifestation of Ifrit's destructive power. It pulsed and shone with intense light, the flames dancing violently on its surface like a sun. The heat emitted was so intense that it could be felt at a considerable distance, causing even the most distant observers to step back. Skypiea was no longer in darkness. Enel, watching from the air, was incredulous as the purple flames formed and grew in Luffy's hands. The intensity and size of the fire sphere were such that Enel began to question if his own attack would be enough. "Impossible. How can he?" murmured Enel, his voice betrayed by uncertainty, unable to imagine that a mere mortal could also reach such a level of power. "No, he is just a mortal, I will destroy him." Enel returned to his arrogance. Enel looked to destroy the one who dared challenge him. "Goodbye, mortal, goodbye, Skypiea," he exclaimed, launching the gigantic electric sphere towards the island. Luffy looked at it, and as soon as his sphere was ready, he flapped his wings and flew up with his chaos flame sphere to face the lightning sphere, sending his attack with his own body as if holding a colossal Rasengan with one hand. When the two colossal spheres, one of lightning and the other of flames, met in the sky of Skypiea, the impact was monumental. At the moment the spheres collided, an explosion of unimaginable energy erupted in the sky. The collision released shockwaves that shook all of Skypiea. The sky was illuminated by a dazzling flash, a mix of electric blue and flaming purple, painting an apocalyptic picture while everyone tried to protect themselves. The sound of the explosion was deafening, a combination of thunder and fire, echoing throughout the island. The inhabitants of Skypiea, the Shandies, and even the animals were stunned, watching the fight of the titans in the skies. Many protected themselves as best they could, fearing for their lives in the face of the devastating power being unleashed. The clouds above dispersed violently, as if torn apart by the force of the impact. The air vibrated with the released energy, and the ground trembled under the feet of the island's inhabitants. Below the attack, trees were uprooted, and fragile structures collapsed under the force of the shockwaves. Even Titan and Garuda, transformed, had to use their arms to protect their eyes from the force of the attack. Gonfal, mounted on Pierre, watched the scene with a mix of horror and admiration as his horse was thrown away. He knew he was witnessing an unprecedented event, a battle that would decide the fate of Skypiea. Luffy's crew, who had disembarked in the city, looked up at the sky, worried but confident in their captain's strength. "My husband can handle this," Alvida spoke confidently, trying to reassure the others. The impact of the spheres was both a terrifying and impressive spectacle. An energy cloud formed where they collided. It was a battle of a god and a demon, fought by a pirate and a being who believed himself divine. A fight that would be remembered for 1,000 years by the inhabitants of this place, regardless of the outcome of the confrontation. Chapter: Skypiea, third-person POV. Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. As the two colossal spheres, one of fire and the other of lightning, clashed in the sky of Skypiea, a massive shockwave was released, sweeping the entire islands with relentless force. The impact of this titanic encounter was not limited to the collision site, but reverberated throughout Skypiea, shaking the island to its core. In the forests, gigantic trees trembled and swayed, some being uprooted. The houses and structures in the City of Angels vibrated, with objects falling from shelves and windows shuddering. The Shandies held on firmly to whatever they could, eyes wide and faces marked by fear and admiration in a corner of the forest. In the sky, the collision of the spheres created a spectacle of light and energy that illuminated the entire island. Luffy's purple flames fiercely battled against Enel's blue lightning. The intense glow was so dazzling that many inhabitants of Skypiea had to shield their eyes, while others watched hypnotized, unable to look away from the celestial battle. Ganfal, mounted on his winged horse Pierre, watched the scene with an expression of deep concern. He knew that the outcome of this battle would define the future of Skypiea. Children, the elderly, warriors, and ordinary citizens. All the inhabitants of Skypiea felt the magnitude of the moment. "It looks like the captain is having fun," Reiju commented with her face to the side due to the wind. "How can you say he's having fun?" Vivi complained. "It's so beautiful," Shirahoshi commented, looking at the dance of purple and blue colors in the sky. "It's not beautiful but worrying. Everything is being affected by this fight," Quina complained beside her. "We must protect ourselves," Chopper shouted, scared. "Stop with this kind of scandal. The captain will soon win this fight." Lami comments as she starts to walk, avoiding the wind, and the others ended up following her, most of them reluctantly. In the clouds above, the spheres continued their fierce fight. The energy released was so intense that it seemed to create distortions in the air, as the spheres fought against each other. The battle between Ifrit and Enel reached its dramatic climax. Luffy, transformed into his colossal form of Ifrit, used just one arm to push the gigantic sphere of purple flames upwards. In an act of superhuman strength and determination, his purple flames, emanating a heat and power that seemed to defy the very laws of nature, pressed against the sphere of lightning with an unyielding force. Meanwhile, Enel, behind his own sphere of lightning, was concentrating all his power, using both hands to direct his gigantic electric sphere against the purple fire demon. His expression was a mix of intense effort and growing despair, as he channeled all his energy in an attempt to overpower Luffy. As the battle of the two colossal forces, fire and lightning, clashed with ferocity, a surprising phenomenon began to occur. Luffy's chaos flames, which formed the gigantic sphere of purple fire, had an extraordinary property of the chaos flames. They began to consume the lightning molecules of Enel's sphere. It was as if the flames themselves had a will of their own, desiring to dominate the opposing energy. As the fight between the spheres continued, Luffy's sphere of flames gradually gained an advantage. The purple flames advanced, enveloping and disintegrating Enel's electric energy. It was a spectacle for all who were watching at that moment. The chaos flames devoured the electrical energy, making Enel's sphere seem as if it were being eaten away each time Luffy's sphere penetrated the lightning energy. Enel, seeing his sphere being consumed by Luffy's flames, struggled desperately to maintain control. His face displayed a mix of shock and disbelief. "How is this possible? I am a god!" he screamed, unable to believe that his powerful attack was being devoured by the strange flames. Luffy's sphere of fire became even more intense. The impact of this phenomenon was so great that the light emitted by the flames began to outshine the lightning sphere itself. The spectators in Skypiea watched, amazed and astonished, as the battlefield shifted. The fire sphere now dominated the sky, a clear demonstration of Luffy's immense power and advantage against his self-proclaimed god. His sphere of lightning, once an immense manifestation of his divine power, was now being consumed by Luffy's chaos flames. The electric blue of the sphere began to fade, being replaced by the vibrant purple of Luffy's flames. Enel desperately tried to salvage his attack, but it seemed futile. He watched the remnants of his sphere disappear as a colossal ball of fire headed his way. He looked at it with a dead gaze, knowing he could not be harmed by the huge sphere, but he felt lost. Everything he had done in the fight was useless. The other part hurt him and ended his attacks, no matter how he tried to deal with that man who named himself Monkey D. Luffy. "This is a nightmare, that's what it is. I hope to wake up soon." He came to this conclusion, waiting for the sphere to hit him to wake up from this supposed dream. Just when the sphere was about to hit him, under everyone's gaze, it dissolved, emitting heat throughout Skypiea. Enel was also surprised, but before he could formulate a reaction, completely absorbed in his shock and surprise, he didn't see Ifrit emerge from the flames of the sphere and quickly approach in the air. With a flap of his wings, Ifrit flew through his flames to reach Enel. Luffy filled his fist with a bit of armament haki and leaned in for the final attack. Enel couldn't react as Luffy used his colossal fist and haki to punch the Logia user in the air with devastating force. Luffy's giant hand, wrapped in purple flames and haki, struck Enel with such impact that it violently launched him towards the island below. As Enel flew through the air, his expression was a mix of pain and disbelief, as he bled and lost consciousness from the attack, flying to the ground. The inhabitants of Skypiea, still recovering from the spectacle of the colossal spheres, now witnessed Enel being launched to the island like a falling meteor. His body crossed the sky, a trail of electric energy and blood following his trajectory, until finally colliding with the island with a resounding boom. Boom! The impact of Enel on the island was so powerful that it created a wave in that area like an earthquake, raising dust and debris and causing a tremor that could be felt at various points in the upper yard. Enel lay there, knocked out and motionless, defeated by the hands of Luffy. "It seems it's over," Luffy murmured as his body in the air began to glow and his transformation was being undone, returning to his common form while his cloak and hat fluttered in the air. With Luffy's final impact on Enel, the battle that dominated the sky of Skypiea came to an end. The dark clouds that had formed during the confrontation began to dissipate, allowing the daylight to return, bathing the island with the soft glow of the sun again. The sky, which moments before witnessed a clash of almost divine forces, now returned to its usual serenity. Throughout Skypiea, The inhabitants emerged from their hideouts and places of refuge, looking around with a mix of relief and confusion. They wondered what exactly had happened, trying to process the surreal events they had just witnessed without understanding anything. What was that? What happened? Where is Enel? They asked each other, while looking at the now clear sky, searching for answers. Meanwhile, Luffy still maintained his wings flying in the sky. With an expression of satisfaction, he flew down to the area devastated by Enel and landed gently on the island's soil, near where Enel had fallen. Enel lay on the ground, defeated and injured. His body was covered with wounds and marks from the confrontation since the beginning of the fight. "You don't seem so divine now, do you?" Luffy didn't miss a chance to mock as he approached and picked up some sea stone chains and handcuffs. As soon as he placed the handcuffs on Enel and saw him securely restrained, his gaze returned to the sky where two figures were approaching. Nami and Hugo, in their normal forms after undoing their colossal transformations, landed near Luffy. Nami, with her orange hair gently swaying in the wind, had a look of relief and curiosity on her face. "Did you defeat him? It was quite a flashy fight, Luffy." She looked at him a bit worried, searching for any injuries on her captain. "It was fun but quite easy for me." Luffy shrugged, as he had even extended the fight waiting for some challenge from Enel. But he was already much stronger to face him. "What shall we do now, Captain?" Hugo asked. "We'll wait for some interesting guests to approach. In the meantime, let the rest of the crew do what they want in the City of Angels, then we'll explore the island." Luffy spoke, thinking that the Shandies and even Ganfall would approach with Enel defeated and wanting to know our intentions. "You didn't kill him, any reason?" Hugo asked with interest, since Luffy could very well have killed Enel. "This guy's name is Enel. He might be a fool with great power, but he's quite useful beyond his fruit. I'll have a chat with him when he wakes up," Luffy commented, wanting to ask Enel some questions and try to recruit him for his crew. If he was successful and sure the man wouldn't betray him, he would have a powerful force more. Otherwise, he could not let him live, and would try to reallocate his fruit to someone else. Luffy sighed amid the wreckage and couldn't help but think, looking at the beanstalk-like structure rising to the sky in the middle of the island. "A few months ago when I was in the East Blue, I thought I would have a few days to finish things on this island, but it seems I did it in just a few hours," Luffy thought. A while later, while he was hugging Nami trying to play hard to get to provoke her, a winged horse emerged from the sky, and Gonfall approached while in the forest. Numerous people with small wings on their backs appeared, coming from the place. The Shandies, along with Ganfall, watched the scene from a distance as they approached the devastated area with trees and rocks scattered everywhere. They looked at the trio, especially at Luffy next to a defeated and injured Enel, with eyes full of suspicion and fascination, trying to understand who these strangers were that had defeated Enel. Luffy, still sporting his two huge black wings, looked like a mythical figure, a black angel out of an ancient legend even in this place. His wings, much larger than those of any inhabitant of Skypiea, gave him an imposing and mysterious aura. The Shandies, accustomed to the modest white wings that adorned their own backs, watched with a mix of respect and fear. Ganfall, the former god of Skypiea, mounted on his winged horse Pierre and holding his spear, examined Luffy with a discerning look. He knew that Luffy was not an ordinary being, and his curiosity about Luffy's intentions and origins grew. "Who are these outsiders? They possess a power I've never seen before," Ganfall murmured to himself as he cautiously approached. "It looks like our guests have finally arrived," Luffy commented. After all, he should declare that Skypiea is now his territory, and he would spend a good time here to strengthen his entire crew before starting to shock the world below. This place would mark the beginning of Luffy's true plans that would make him and his crew a real force in the sea. Chapter 171. Skypiea 07 Third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. The atmosphere at the destroyed site between Luffy and the spectators was tense, uncertainty hanging in the air. The Shandies, led by Wiper, a fearless and respected warrior among his tribe, watched Luffy with evident caution beside Enel in a state they could never have imagined, knocked out and injured. Everyone, still haunted by the recent battle, waited eagerly to hear the intentions of the one who had easily defeated their self-proclaimed invincible god, as besides some dust on his clothes, Luffy showed no injuries from the fight. Wiper stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Luffy with a bit of caution. "Who are you? Why did you enter into conflict against Enel, and what do you intend to do now?" he asked, his voice laden with a mix of curiosity and challenge. The other Shandies and inhabitants of Skypiea waited in silence, attentive to the response of this man who made Enel seem quite weak. Luffy, with a calm and confident expression, observed the group gathered before him, My name is Monkey D. Luffy, I am a pirate from the lower sea, and from today onwards, Skypiea is my territory, declared Luffy. His voice resonating with authority, Luffy's announcement caused an immediate buzz among the Shandies, and Ganfall narrowed his eyes at Luffy. Some looked surprised, others seemed uncertain about how to react to the bold declaration. The idea of Skypiea going from the hands of one tyrant to another even more powerful didn't seem to bring joy to them. Your territory? What does that mean? Will you be like Enel was to us? We don't intend to give up our home, not even Enel could get rid of us, a Shandy shouted from the crowd, and others also agreed. Picking up strange weapons used by the people of Skypiea. They don't seem to take it very well, Captain. Hugo commented the obvious. It's okay, just a hockey to end their wills, Luffy murmured, but before he could use it, a voice from above spoke in a firm tone. Calm down. Haven't you seen what he can do? Besides becoming that monster in front of everyone, Enel was completely defeated by him, and you think you can deal with this man from the lower sea? You will just lose your lives without knowing his real intentions with your words, Ganfall shouted, and those most eager to fight against Luffy thought a bit and saw that it wouldn't be the smartest option without hearing the other side. Ganfall, who observed the crowd calming down, turned his attention to Luffy alongside his companions with Enel fallen. He knew the stories of pirates from the lower sea and was aware of a bit of what Luffy had said. And what does that mean for Skypiea and its people? Are you going to govern our peoples like Enel? Asked Ganfall, his voice still maintaining a bit of respect. Luffy looked at Ganfall and the Shandies. It means that I won't interfere in internal affairs of the kingdom, and that you will have freedom to choose who will govern you, and you will be under the protection of my flag. I will protect this place and its inhabitants. Nobody will threaten Skypiea while it is under my name, Luffy affirmed, showing a strong determination. And Enel will no longer be a problem for you. And that has a cost, doesn't it? Ganfall spoke, expecting Luffy to state what it would cost his people. That's true. I bet you're just another Enel, wanting to enslave us with your tyranny, exclaimed one of the Shandies, echoing the sentiment of many present. The fear of being subjugated by another authoritarian leader was among the crowd. Luffy, understanding the tension and fear in their eyes, raised his hand to silence the crowd. I am not here to enslave or oppress anyone. My interest is not in the internal power of your kingdom, he explained, his voice firm and convincing. What I want is to establish a development agenda here. I will use a part of Skypiea to train me and my people, of course. As my territory and under my protection, there will be a tribute to my flag. Luffy's words brought a new element to the discussion. For Ganfall, the idea of having the protection of a group of powerful pirates like these was something many on the island had never considered. Something like this could have even prevented the rise of Enel, as there was no one who could deal with him, but that could change if they had help from the Blue Sea. Ganfall, reflecting on Luffy's words, saw an opportunity for a new beginning in Skypiea. One, if your intentions are true, and you respect the autonomy and freedom of our people, perhaps we can find a way to peaceful coexistence, and I believe others may agree with this, he said thoughtfully. Are we really going to do this? Are you sure he won't be like Enel? But he said he won't get involved with us. If we had this, Enel could never have risen. Ganfall, how can you sell us out like this? It's true, we are Shandies, we bow to no one. We won't hand Skypiea over to people from the Blue Sea. Luffy's proposal sparked discussions. Some saw something positive in it. But soon those who didn't like the idea voiced their concerns after all. They never backed down or gave up during Enel's regime. They wouldn't trust a stranger so easily. They remained skeptical and wary, unable to fully trust the words of a pirate, even after witnessing his strength and Enel's defeat. Realizing that words wouldn't be enough to dispel their doubts and fears, Luffy decided to demonstrate his power more directly. A wave emanated from him, releasing his conqueror's haki. The aura emitted by Luffy was so powerful and oppressive that none of them had ever witnessed anything like it, and it began to physically affect those around him. Suddenly, many of those present, especially the weaker ones, felt the overwhelming pressure of Luffy's haki, causing them to involuntarily kneel. Even the greatest warriors were affected, dropping their weapons. The effect was immediate and impressive. All the Shandies except for a few, now kneeling, looked at Luffy with a mixture of renewed respect and fear. Ganfall, observing the scene, felt a mix of admiration and concern. He knew that Conqueror's haki was a characteristic of exceptional and powerful individuals from the lower sea, as he saw some decades ago. When a pirate Gol D. Roger arrived on the Sky Island and brought all of Ganfall's forces at that time to their knees, and Luffy's display confirmed that he also possessed this strange power. Author here, I don't know what really happened, but I think something similar might have occurred, since Gold D. Roger walked through Skypiea as if on vacation, and I don't think the inhabitants would have taken that very well. After the hockey display, Luffy spoke again, this time with unquestionable authority. I don't want to rule Skypiea with fear. I want you to see that the protection I offer is real, and that together we can create a better place. You may not trust me now, but in a few years, you will see great results, he said. Now with the crowd's full attention. Seeing that no one else was speaking, even Wiper and Ganfall silent, Luffy continued, Said I will talk to all of you later. Ganfall, you better calm the people of the City of Angels and Shandies, we will have a meeting tomorrow. For now I will sort some things out with my crew, but remember, whether you like it or not, Skypiea now belongs to my territory, to the Straw Hat Pirates, he declared, with an authority that left no room for questioning. Luffy's final statement was direct and to the point, making it clear that, regardless of their opinions or feelings, the island was under his dominion. He no longer sought to convince or calm. Instead, he asserted a reality that everyone in Skypiea would have to accept. The inhabitants and Shandies exchanged glances among themselves, some with expressions of resignation, others still showing signs of discontent. The imposing presence of Luffy and the reality of the power he held were undeniable. The Conqueror's haki was far more convincing than the Logia of Thunder. Now I'm going to see my crew, Hugo, Nami, let's go, Luffy said, grabbing the unconscious Enel and flying into the air with his huge black wings, heading towards the City of Angels where the Black Pearl was. Upon arriving at the ship, Luffy was greeted by Choo-Choo, who had returned to the ship to stay as a guard with a woof, woof. After petting the dog, he first went to the cabin where there was a ship that he had left in miniature since they began climbing to Skypiea. He didn't put them back to normal size as soon as they arrived because with Enel's shots they could have been eliminated. Stepping out with the boat in hand, Luffy threw it beside the ship into the Sea of Clouds and immediately used the ability of the Moa Moa no Mi, which granted him the power to manipulate the size of things, to return the boat to its original size. As the boat grew, the former slaves aboard began to emerge from the cabins. Astonished by the sudden transformation, Luffy asked them to leave the ship and go to the City of Angels, looking around in surprise as they still couldn't believe they were in the sky. They obeyed Luffy and stayed in a corner of the port until Ganfall arrived in the city, who, according to Luffy, would take care of their stay here. After dealing with the former slaves of the Goa Kingdom's ship, Luffy picked up Enel again and took him to the ship's prison alone, while Nami, Hugo, and Choo-Choo waited on the deck. Reaching the prison, Lucius encountered the former members of Baroque Works, who had been previously captured in the same cells. They stared at him, surprised by the captain's arrival with a new prisoner who was quite peculiar with drums on his back and giant ears. Bon Clay greeted Luffy as usual, and after Luffy locked Enel in the former cell of Jimbei, he turned his attention to the other prisoners, addressing them at this moment. The time has come to release you, he announced, immediately capturing everyone's attention. What? You're going to release us? Mr. 3 looked suspiciously at Luffy. Mugi-chan, Bon Clay twirled happily. Please get me out of here, we've been in this place for a month, Mikita implored. Well, I offer you a choice, continued Lucius, looking straight at each one of them. You can join my official fleet that will carry my flag and be summoned when we need you. If you accept, you will start intensive training here in Skypiea to become truly strong. It will be an opportunity to start a new life, away from the mistakes of the past and under a new flag. Silence filled the room as the prisoners processed the offer. Some prisoners exchanged glances among themselves, pondering the decision. I accept, Mugi-chan, Bon Clay was the first to shout. Baroque Works no longer existed, why should he be loyal to them now? Besides, Bon Clay liked Luffy a lot as a friend he made in the last month. I want to as well, please get us out of here, Mikita spoke with a glimmer of hope. I'm in. Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. 4 also nodded. Please, get me out of here, we've been in this place for a month. I'm in your fleet too, I just want to take a bath, Mikita begged. I'm in too, said Galdino, still a bit hesitant, but clearly curious about what the future might hold. Which would probably be better by accepting to join this pirates organization. Little by little, everyone accepted the offer. Their organization was no more. Crocodile had been captured and was in prison. What choice did they have? With their decision, the former members of Baroque Works became part of the growing Straw Hat Fleet, ready to embark on a new journey under Luffy's flag, and strengthening in the realms of Skypiea would be just the beginning of their journey with the iconic flag featuring the straw hat. A new era of adventures and transformations awaited each of them, now allies of one of the most promising crews of the seas. Chapter 172, Skypia 08, third-person POV Skypia, first half of Grand Line. After opening all the cells, the former members of Baroque Works followed Luffy outside, leaving only Enel as the sole prisoner in the jail. "You decided to free them, Captain," Hugo said. "I hope they don't cause trouble," Nami said, crossing her arms. "Don't worry, I'll give them my vote of confidence. I hope we can trust each other. They will be a good addition to the fleet I'm creating," Luffy comments on some of his reasons. "Freedom!" Mr. 2, always cheerful, immediately shouted excitedly, while the others also seemed quite relieved after leaving for the first time in a month, isolated in prison. "Let's talk now," Luffy announces in front of the members of his main crew and the new members of the fleet. Luffy began to share his plans with the new members and the part of the crew that was present. "Let's talk about the future," Luffy started, with a tone of voice that mixed seriousness and enthusiasm. "Skypia will not just be our base, it will be the heart of our expansion and strengthening here. We will use this place, out of the sight of most of the world, to strengthen ourselves in the coming months before continuing our journey." Luffy said, war was coming, as his brother would still go after Teach, so he needed to strengthen his crew like never before. The three main crew members looked at Luffy, already expecting something like this. Even though they still didn't know about the coming war, their captain had always given priority to their training while they sailed the sea. He looked at the new recruits, Bentham, Babe, Galdino, Marianne, Makita, and Miss Merry Christmas. "Welcome to the Straw Hat Fleet, those of you who have joined us. This is an opportunity to start anew. We will use each of your skills in the best possible way. You will be so powerful when you come out of this training that you'll even be able to beat Crocodile, your former boss." Luffy smiled at their surprised expressions. "Can we really do that? Luffy-chan," Bentham shouted. "Yes, I'm sure you'll all be powerful when I'm done with you," Luffy smiled, while the former Baroque Works members were oblivious to what they were in for. Hugo, Nami, and Chuchu felt sorry for them. At that moment, Yamato approached, sensing that Luffy had returned to the ship with his haki. "Want to Luffy, is everything all right here? I saw the fight from afar, it seems like you handled that lightning user well." Luffy smiled at her, reassuring her. "Everything is under control, Yamato. How are the others? Onensei A are all exploring the city, but the people are quite scared," she said. "That's to be expected anyway. Ganfall, the former ruler of this place, should be arriving to control the population." Luffy crossed his arms. "This is Yamato, the vice captain of the group." Luffy introduced her to the new members as he had done with them to Yamato. After the greetings, Luffy resumed speaking. "Everything is fine now. Things here are over, at least for today. Let's enjoy the City of Angels and relax a bit. There's a lot to explore and enjoy here in Skypia," he said, encouraging everyone to enjoy the moment of calm after the clash with Enel, whose followers were also killed by Nami and Hugo. Enel was not a man who needed an army, so there were no more enemies. Luffy went to the edge of the ship and jumped onto the Sea of Clouds port in the city. "Let's go. I want to see what this city has to offer as well." His smile was contagious, and everyone followed him into the city. Luffy, accompanied by Hugo, Nami, and Yamato, walked towards the City of Angels in Skypia. With them followed the freed former slaves and the newly integrated members of Baroque Works, the group attracting curious looks from the local inhabitants, many still hiding in their homes. The former slaves and members of Baroque Works, now free, looked around with a mix of disbelief. They marveled at the unique structures of this kingdom and the winged inhabitants of Skypia. As Luffy and his group explored the City of Angels, a commotion began to form in one of the main squares, with a crowd being formed with most of the city's inhabitants. The crowd gathered, attracted by the sudden presence of Ganfall, who emerged to address the citizens of Skypia. With a serene but authoritative posture, Ganfall began to speak. "People of Skypia, a significant change has occurred today," Ganfall announced, his firm voice echoing through the square. "Enel, who for so long imposed his reign of tyranny over us, has been defeated." A murmur of surprise and relief swept through the crowd. Faces that previously exhibited fear and uncertainty now lit up with hope, but still, the doubt of their self-proclaimed god having been defeated made everyone wonder who could have done such a thing. Seizing the moment, Luffy approached with his group. "And the one who defeated Enel was a pirate from the lower sea, that one there with the straw hat," Ganfall announced, pointing to Luffy approaching with his group. This immediately made the crowd look back in surprise at this pirate, and the revelation that it was he who defeated Enel. At that moment, the crowd stirred with murmurs of surprise while looking with some fear at the man at the front of this group. Then Luffy stepped forward, a confident smile on his face, and impressive black wings growing on his back at that moment. Hello everyone, Luffy exclaimed, his voice echoing through the square. I'm Bunky D. Luffy. From now on, I'm taking responsibility for Skypiea, but don't worry, I'm not here to rule or impose tyrannical rules. I'm here to ensure that this kingdom prospers, and I'll use this place to train my crew for a while without affecting your lives. With this place becoming my territory, as long as I'm alive. No other Enel will appear, and you can even consider me as one of you, Luffy declared, his voice full of sincerity, while black wings sprouted from his back, lifting his cloak, to make the people more accustomed to him. As he spoke, majestic black wings unfolded behind Luffy, elevating his cloak, and creating an impressive silhouette that caused murmurs of admiration and surprise among the crowd. The contrasting sight of his dark wings with the white and modest wings of Skypiea's inhabitants was a spectacle in itself. Nami, watching closely, couldn't help but comment with a sigh of disdain mixed with a smile. Show off. Beside her, some women from the town looked at Luffy almost with reverence, impressed by his charismatic and powerful presence. Bon Clay, also present, did not hide his enthusiasm. So cool! Luffy-chan! He exclaimed, delighted with his friend's transformation. Luffy, observing the crowd's reaction, continued with his message. I want to assure all of you that, as long as I live, no tyrant like Enel will threaten this place again. Skypiea will be a safe sanctuary, a refuge under my watch. He paused, allowing his words to echo among the listeners. Additionally, I've brought some people with me who need a home. Luffy pointed to the group of former slaves behind him. They are just looking for a peaceful place to start over. Ganfall, could you accommodate them here in the city, right? Ganfall, watching everything closely, nodded in agreement, recognizing Luffy's noble gesture. Luffy ended his speech with a warm wave to the crowd, who now looked at him with a mix of curiosity, respect, and a hint of admiration. Now, if you'll excuse me, I will find the rest of my crew. We have a lot to explore and enjoy in this beautiful city. With these words, he turned and joined his companions, ready to discover the charms of Skypiea. Ganfall would take care of other matters without Luffy and convince the people of Skypiea about the changes this kingdom would undergo now that it is territory of the crew. Luffy walked to join the rest of his crew. When he found them, his group of nearly people were gathered looking at various shells that only the Sky Island could offer. As Luffy approached, Shirahoshi, with her innocent and curious look, held a shell-shaped device, clearly enchanted by the technological wonders of Skypiea, as were Kuina, Nojiko, and Robin. Beside her, Vivi was discussing animatedly with Chopper and Usopp about the peculiarities of the local architecture. Upon reaching the group, Luffy was greeted with a chorus of greetings. Luffy, you finally arrived, Usopp exclaimed, with his usual enthusiasm. Chopper, carrying a pile of exotic fruits, waved cheerfully. Look, Luffy-sama, Shirahoshi approached with a shell-shaped device and pressed a button. Look, Luffy-sama, the shell repeated what Shirahoshi had said, finding it incredible. See, I see you're having fun. Here, there are many things we don't find in the sea below, so enjoy and spend your money as you like. By the way, the currency in this place is quite inflated. I think I'll have to change that. It's much more devalued than berries. I'll talk to Ganfall about it later, Luffy murmured. After meeting with Ganfall and the crowd, Luffy joined the rest of his crew to enjoy everything the City of Angels had to offer. The atmosphere in the city was now one of celebration and relief, a welcome change after the tension of the battle against Enel. Luffy, with his characteristic enthusiasm, led the group through the city while people looked at them with curiosity. Besides being outsiders from the Blue Sea, their captain was the one who had defeated Enel. Let's stop here, let's have a feast. The city center is big enough for this, Luffy said, and took out Black Pearl from his pocket, throwing it in front of the square, causing a large explosion to arise from its weight. It's time to celebrate our victory and the freedom of the new members of our fleet. His enthusiastic voice echoed through the square, infecting everyone around. Sharky, Shikaru, Kurgur, Wolf. The animals got excited, and quickly the team began to organize the party. Hugo and Zoro took care of the drinks, bringing the best wines and exotic juices found in the city. Bentham, always cheerful, took on the role of entertainment, putting on an improvised dance show that drew laughter and applause from the local inhabitants. Nojiko, Hachi, and Rieju organized the food. They gathered a variety of local and exotic delicacies, setting up a table full of colorful and aromatic dishes that whetted everyone's appetite. The atmosphere in the square transformed. What was once a city of tension and fear under Enel's rule now filled with music, laughter, and joy. The inhabitants of Skypiea, initially hesitant, began to join the celebration, drawn by the infectious energy of the party. The members of Baroque Works, now free and part of the Straw Hat Fleet, along with the giants Bragi and Dory, mingled with the crew and the locals, sharing stories and laughter. The initial distrust gave way to lively conversations and unexpected friendships. As the sun set, the square lit up with colorful lanterns made by Skypia's devices, creating a magical setting. The music continued, now with Chopper and Usopp joining in with their improvised instruments, which they clearly didn't know how to play, adding more joy to the party. Luffy, observing everything from a corner, smiled contentedly. It was more than a celebration, it was the beginning of a new era for Skypia and for his crew. Chapter Skypia Third-Person POV Skypia First Half of Grand Line. The following day under the clear sky of Skypia, Luffy, now also known as the pirate who had ended Enel's regime, got up early from a bed filled with deeply sleeping women, determined to start the new day with his expanded crew and the newly integrated former members of Baroque Works. The cruise ship was still in the middle of the city. Luffy gathered everyone on the deck of the Black Pearl, presenting himself with the posture of a born leader. "It's time to go to the upper yard, let's discover the City of Gold," Luffy announced, exciting both the main crew and the fleet members. Luffy wanted to begin his grandest plan, which he had in mind as soon as his memories of his past life were reintroduced in that solitary barrel in the East Blue. After the meeting, Luffy used his power to change the ship's gravity and weight. With Nami behind him using her wind, the ship started to fly towards another island of Skypia. The group flew over the forest and the areas destroyed by the fight between Luffy and Enel, while Luffy asked Nami to head towards the City of Gold. The city's inhabitants watched the ship flying away with wide eyes, leaving the square empty after a great party the previous day. They had become accustomed to the presence of this group, and even made friends with some of them. As they neared the City of Gold, anticipation grew. Luffy, standing at the ship's bow, pointed forward, where a dense mass of clouds hid their destination in the center of the island. After crossing much of the upper yard, the Black Pearl arrived at the location where Shandora was supposed to be. They landed below the enormous fern-like tree reaching upwards. "Nami, stop here, I'm going to lower the ship." The ship landed on the ground, and the crew followed Luffy. "Luffy, is this where the City of Gold is?" Robin asked. "It's beneath us. The clouds are preventing us from seeing the city, and they are solid." "Zoro, Kuina, and Hachi, can you cut through the clouds?" The trio took out their swords and began cutting through the clouds beside the ferns. It didn't take long with their enhanced skills to reach the city. With the clouds falling like blocks, the city was finally revealed. Shandora appeared before everyone, made of gold and filled with ferns that had grown over time. The city, lost amidst a lower elevation than the terrain above, was a spectacle of majestic and golden ruins. Covered by the passage of time, it still retained traces of its ancient glory. "Let's go," Luffy announced, jumping into the hole made by the swordsman, and everyone followed him. The city was not just made of gold. There were sculptures and reliefs carved into the walls that told stories of gods, warriors, and ancient myths, while inscriptions in an ancient language decorated the entrances of temples. Temples and buildings, although in ruins, displayed a complex and refined architecture of a people from many eras. Stone walls and columns were adorned with gold ornaments, reflecting the sun's rays after so long without sunlight penetrating there. In the center of the city, there was a fern-like tree reaching up to the sky. Luffy recognized it as the location of the Golden Bell. The reaction of Luffy's crew upon seeing the City of Gold of Shandora was pure amazement and admiration. Nami, with her eyes shining with excitement and visible dollar signs, was clearly impressed by the incalculable wealth the city represented. "Look at all this gold," she exclaimed, almost hypnotized by the amount of gold adorning the ruins. The idea of so much wealth in one place seemed to ignite a spark of ambition and excitement in her. Shirahoshi and Vivi were also enchanted, their expressions reflecting a mix of reverence and wonder. Shirahoshi, with her large and bright eyes, looked around with an expression of pure wonder. "Ain't so beautiful, I never stop being amazed by the things of the surface," she said softly, her voice full of admiration. The mermaid princess was clearly enchanted by the shine and magnificence of the place. Vivi, with her interest in history, was equally fascinated. Just like Robin, who touched the ruins while walking through the streets, carefully observing the sculptures and inscriptions on the walls. "Just think of the history behind all of this," she commented, her tone full of curiosity and appreciation for the culture and past of the city. The other crew members also showed their own reactions of fascination. Zoro looked around with casual interest, more focused on the structure and design of the city than the gold itself. Usopp, always the storyteller, was already beginning to imagine and create heroic legends involving the lost city for his future listeners. The members of Baroque Works were practically drooling over the gold. They worked for money in the organization, so it was an expected reaction when seeing all that gold. The giants, however, looked at the gold with little interest. Luffy, in turn, smiled with satisfaction, as all that gold would be very welcome for his system. He walked through the city with an air of excitement and curiosity, looking with great admiration at the place. Luffy, with a mischievous and characteristic smile, looked at his crew gathered in the City of Gold and made an enthusiastic announcement. "Guys, feel free to explore the city and take whatever you want." His voice was full of enthusiasm, not caring how much gold his crew could get from the city. "The rule is simple. Take as much gold as you can carry," he announced, leaving some members, especially the new ones, with wide eyes and open mouths at Luffy's generosity. Nami was the first to react, her eyes shining even more intensely upon hearing Luffy's words. "Thank you, Luffy," she exclaimed, already starting to plan which treasures she might collect. The idea of taking a part of that wealth for herself was irresistible. Everyone began to scatter around the city looking for things that interested them. Bentham expressed his joy and excitement with a series of dramatic poses and enthusiastic declarations. "Oh, what a wonder! Look at all this gold," he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with the prospect of freedom and wealth. Galdino examined the structures and artifacts, pondering how they could be useful or valuable. "There's a lot of wealth here." Marianne, instead of looking for gold, took out her easel and began to paint the city. "This will be worth a lot of money," she murmured. Meanwhile, the other members were collecting gold around the place. Luffy stayed inside the city, not too excited to see the ruins. He would collect the gold soon for the system. The giants ended up staying with him and Zoro. After hours of exploring the magnificent city of gold of Skypiea, Luffy's crew members returned to the meeting point, carrying not only bags filled with gold and valuable artifacts, but also adorned with jewels that reflected the wealth and history of that legendary city. The excitement and contentment were visible on each face, as they shared their discoveries and achievements. "I think we've collected enough," announced Luffy, capturing everyone's attention. "Now, we need to discuss something of utmost importance, something that will define our future." His voice, heavy with seriousness, silenced the animated chatter of the group. Gathered around Luffy, the crew members waited expectantly. "I'm going to show you something impressive," Luffy said, a sly smile on his lips. He extended his hand towards the golden ground of the city. In the next moment, an unbelievable scene unfolded before their eyes. The space around the city began to distort strangely, and like a voracious whirlpool, the golden artifacts began to be sucked towards Luffy. The legendary city of gold disappeared, absorbed by an invisible force emanating from Luffy, leaving behind only a vast empty area. "Ha ha ha ha! Look at this! I practically cleaned out the city with this system," Luffy laughed, observing the areas now devoid of their golden splendor. The group looked at Luffy with a mix of admiration and fear. "I can't believe it! I fell in love with my greatest adversary," Nami murmured, perplexed by the demonstration of power. "And the captain is really relentless," commented Beppo, a little dazed by what he had just witnessed. "Luffy always goes over the top," Kuina added, shaking her head. "It's actually incredible." Chopper, usually the most innocent, couldn't contain an expression of admiration. Luffy, pleased with his companion's reactions, didn't lose focus. "Now, let me explain how we are going to use this treasure." His eyes sparkled as he consulted the store system in his mind. Store system points, berries. He observed the impressive amount he had accumulated, knowing that soon this number would decrease drastically as he invested in purchasing devil fruits and other essential items to strengthen his crew. It was a decisive moment, a crucial step towards the grand future he planned for himself and those who followed him. Chapter 174, Skypiea 10, Third-Person POV Skypiea, First Half of Grand Line. After the dazzling spectacle of turning a large part of the City of Gold into digital riches, Luffy calmly turned to his still stunned crew. All eyes were fixed on him, still processing what they had just witnessed with open mouths and eyes the size of an egg. Luffy smiled. He decided it was the ideal moment to discuss the future plans of the Straw Hat crew. "Everyone, pay attention," called Luffy, his voice carrying natural authority. "What you just saw is just a fundraising to strengthen our crew," Luffy began, looking at each of them. Nami, always practical, intervened. "On Luffy, with all this gold you've absorbed, what are your plans? How will this help us?" "Since our ultimate goal," Luffy continued, "is to dominate the seas, not to rule with tyranny, but to ensure freedom and safety for all of us and for those under our protection, I've never hidden this. I intend to overthrow the world government, Since with it, how could I be the Emperor of the Sea? Luffy said, leaving everyone even more surprised by this. The world government? Usopp shouted as usual. Luffy, you can't be serious! Vivi practically screamed in alarm. Even Robin was stunned. Well, that makes sense, but it's a surprise to hear this. How many people can say that? Reiju said calmly. And I hope this doesn't bring us trouble. Alvida spoke. What do you mean it won't cause trouble? This is a big problem, Quina complained. Unliked it. Hugo crossed his arms. Me too, Zoro said. Do you intend to join the revolutionaries? Lami asked, seeing that the goals intertwine. And they are allies, since my father is the leader and my foster brother is also a high official. So it's quite possible we'll be together in the final battle. Luffy comments, responding to Lami. Wait, Mugi-chan, are we going to face the whole government? Bomb Clay asked, a bit worried. The crew members mostly already expected this from their captain. But the new intriguing members of the fleet were quite frightened. This seems fun, doesn't it, Broggy? And, of course, we can face powerful opponents, Dory. All but, Luffy looked at everyone and continued. The plan is the following. Something big will happen in the next few months at most, something that will change the world, Luffy announces, leaving everyone a bit surprised by this statement. Something that will change the world? Nojiko commented. What's going to happen, Captain? Beppo exclaimed with some fear. A war that will change the era. The era of pirates is about to end, Luffy said confidently. The great era of pirates? Chopper asked, a bit surprised. Karoo? Vivi's duck was also confused. Yes, and we will act right in the middle of the storm. After that, sometime after that, we will start a war in the new world behind territories to get our own place in that sea, Luffy spoke. Wolf, wolf, Chaochu barked excitedly. Grrr, Laboon joined his friend. This seems dangerous, Nami commented. Will we be ready? Yamato asked. Oh, don't worry, we will train a lot in this kingdom before continuing our journey. When I'm done with you, you all will be so powerful that you can face the Marine headquarters with all its forces and survive it. Luffy had a sadistic smile at this moment, sending a shiver to all of them. They now knew they would train like never before. I don't like this, Makita murmured. Oh, me neither. I just hope he respects the elders, Miss Merry Christmas said. Luffy continued. When we are powerful, we have some members with haki, like Shirahoshi and Yamato. Powerful mythical Zoan fruits, like me, Yamato, Nami, Chuchu and Hugo. But this strength is still not enough. This time will be dedicated to intensive training, especially in haki. The challenges we will face from now on will be enormous, and we need to be prepared. The crew nodded in agreement, aware of the seriousness of Luffy's words. Some, like Zoro and Yamato, seemed particularly eager for the rigorous training that was to come. We will face powerful enemies, governments, other pirates, and maybe even the forces of nature, said Luffy. Each one of you will have to surpass your limits. We will train hard, learn to control and enhance our skills, and become stronger together. We'll make Skypiea our temporary headquarters. Here, we have the freedom and space we need to grow. When we leave, we will be a force the world will have to recognize. He emphasized this part again. Now let's start the next topic, Luffy announced, opening a screen in front of him. Luffy, with his eyes fixed on the system before him, began to carefully select the items he would buy with his billion berries. The screen displayed an impressive variety of options, but he knew exactly what his crew needed to strengthen on his wish list. First, he selected the mythical Akuma no Mi, Akon no Mi model Phoenix, price, berries. This mythical Zoan-type fruit, gender-neutral of the Phoenix, with a fire element, would be perfect for a crew member who needed regenerative abilities and fire manipulation. Icon no Mi, model, Shiva. Price, 5 billion berries. This mythical Zoan-type fruit female gender of Shiva with an ice element offers the user freezing ability and creation of massive objects. Icon no Mi, model Bahamut. Price, 5 billion berries. A mythical Zoan-type male Akuma no Mi of Bahamut with a light element. Ideal for someone with extraordinary offensive and defensive abilities at distances. Icon no Mi, model Leviathan. Price, berries. A mythical Zoan-type female Akuma no Mi of Leviathan, with a water element. Suitable for someone with a natural affinity with the sea and the ability to manipulate water. This fruit was the only one in the world without weakness in the sea. Icon no Mi, model Odin. Price, berries. A mythical Zoan-type male Akuma no Mi of Odin, with a darkness element, offering a powerful set of dark abilities. Next, Luffy selected a legendary weapon. Supreme Grade Sword Ace. Price, 10 billion berries. The last sword used by Gol D. Roger, currently without a possessor. a powerful addition to the crew's arsenal. Finally, he opted for a rare Logia fruit, Wind Logia, berries. A Logia type Akuma no Mi that grants the power to control and transform into wind, a strategic ability for the team. Luffy spent a total of billion berries on the purchases. After these purchases, he still had a remaining balance of billion berries. Luffy confirmed the purchases, feeling satisfied with his choices. He knew these items would be crucial in elevating his crew's power to new heights, preparing them for future challenges. As he finalized the purchases in the system, the items began to materialize in front of him, to the astonishment and admiration of all those present. One by one the objects appeared, each wrapped in an aura of mystery and power. First, the 4 Icon no Mi fruits emerged, shining with distinct colors and energies. The Phoenix model fruit emanated a warmth and a flame glow. The Bahamut had a white glow reminiscent of pure light. The Leviathan fruit exhaled a deep and tranquil blue, and the Odin seemed to absorb light around it, with a dark reddish and enigmatic glow. Each fruit had a unique aspect, reflecting their mythical powers. Next, the Supreme Sword Ace appeared, known for having been used by Gold D. Roger. The blade gleamed with an imposing aura. Its sheath and handle were of simple elegance but emanated a sense of power and history. Everyone in the crew looked at the sword stunned. For those who did not know the weapon, its aura was evident, especially to Zoro and Quina. Finally, the Wind Logia materialized as a constantly moving air sphere, a visual representation of the wind power it conferred. The crew, now surrounded by these incredible treasures, was left speechless. They looked from one item to another. "To these fruits," Nami commented, sensing the familiarity of the fruits with her own. "Yes, they are almost all the icons. There is just one I've set aside for now." Luffy had specific plans for the last icon. He would buy it later and put it in the ship's vault. With a serious yet excited expression, Luffy began to pick up the fruits and throw them to specific crew members. He had already planned who would get each fruit. For Shirahoshi, he handed the Icon no Mi, model Leviathan. "This fruit will transform you into a majestic creature of the ocean. Your power will be unmatched in the waters. It's perfect for you, and you won't lose the ability to swim with it," said Luffy, acknowledging Shirahoshi's natural connection with the sea. "This is for me, Luffy-sama." Shirahoshi looked at the fruit carefully. Zoro received the Icon no Mi, model Odin. "This fruit will give you dark and mysterious power, perfect for a swordsman of your caliber," Luffy said, knowing that Zoro could make the most of this dark power. "The power of darkness," Zoro murmured, thoughtful about eating the fruit. Usopp was gifted the Icon no Mi model Bahamut. "This will turn you into a legendary giant, Usopp. Your ability as a shooter will only grow, being able to launch rays of light instead of bullets," Luffy said, encouraging Usopp to accept the challenge. "What? I will be able to shoot laser beams?" Usopp shouted excitedly, and Chopper had starry eyes beside him. Reiju was graced with the Icon no Mi, model Phoenix. "With this, you gain the power of regeneration and control over flames. It will make you almost unbeatable," Luffy stated, impressed with the capabilities of the fruit. "Such a regeneration? I don't want to be a medic. We already have the gothic girl and Chopper." Reiju murmured. "What did you call me?" Lami shouted from the background. "But I like the flame part, and I'll be able to transform into a giant beast. That sounds interesting." Reiju spoke, nodding about the fruit. Quina was chosen for the Icon no Mi, model Shiva. "Tin's fruit will give you incredible destructive powers, Quina. In addition to freezing and creation of objects, it will enhance your fencing skills," Luffy said, confident in Quina's ability to use these new ice powers. "The power of ice," she commented, looking at her sword, Tensa Zangetsu. Vivi received the Wind Logia. "This fruit will give you control over the wind. Imagine the possibilities in battle and exploration," Luffy observed, thinking about how Vivi could use the power to assist the crew. "The Wind Logia." Vivi was impressed. She knew Crocodile also had a Logia, now she had her own. Luffy handed out the fruits, each with tremendous potential, knowing his companions would use them to further strengthen the crew and help in the battles to come. "So, we will start training from tomorrow. I'll be with you for a week before sorting out some things below us. So you better be prepared for the worst training of your lives," Luffy announced. Chapter, Skypiea Third-Person POV Skypiea, First Half of Grand Line. Luffy looked satisfied at the members of his crew, especially those holding a fruit in their hands. "I will lose the ability to swim if I eat this fruit, right?" Zoro raised the question. "Exactly, except for Shira's fruit since it's from an aquatic beast, you'll have my weaknesses." "Well, I'm not forcing you to eat them, but I believe it would be suitable for you to have this power," Luffy spoke. He would be disappointed if they didn't want the fruits, but he wouldn't force anyone to eat them. If this is going to help me become the greatest swordsman in the world, then so be it. I'll sacrifice my ability to swim and get stronger, Zoro said and immediately ate his fruit. What a horrible taste. He immediately spat it out with a grimace. It can't be that bad, Vivi said, biting into the lochia. This is awful. She looked like she was going to vomit the next moment. How terrible. I'll remember this so I never make a dish like this. What is this? It's the worst taste I've experienced. Zoro was right, this is horrible. This fruit sama is so bad. Said this will make me a brave warrior of the sea. I'll endure the horrible taste. Ah! Chopper, help me, I'm dying. Seeing that everyone had eaten, Luffy smiled. He picked up the last item, the sword called Ace, and replaced the weapon he had borrowed from Zoro. Zoro, take your weapon, now I have my own, Luffy announced, throwing Benihime back to Zoro while placing Ace on his waist. I see you have a special sword, Luffy, Zoro said after getting over the taste of his fruit, and looked with interest at the weapon on Luffy's waist. You have no idea, Luffy smiled. Anyway, you're free to do whatever you want in the upper garden. Some residents might not want our presence and attack you, so just don't kill them, Luffy said. The Shandies probably wouldn't accept their presence as easily as the inhabitants of the City of Angels, and might attack them. But Luffy was more than sure that everyone could handle these guys, now that his entire crew was powerful except Karoo, but Vivi would protect him. Speaking of them, look who showed up. Luffy looked up at the hole that the group's swordsmen had created, and a group of people were looking at them, Ganfall also accompanying them. I'll deal with them alone, you guys can take the day off, just avoid using your transformations with the new powers. Every icon gets out of control the first time, so be careful, Luffy announced and jumped into the air to deal with the visitors, while his crew discussed how to spend the day without the usual hellish training. Luffy landed in front of the group of curious onlookers, who immediately stepped back, fearing this man more powerful than their god. He wasn't arrogant enough to provoke them and belittle them, but that smile on his face made them shiver after seeing the pirate's capabilities. Let's discuss the future of Skypiea. Do you want to do it here or somewhere else? Luffy asked. Can we do it in my tribe? Wapol commented, and Luffy nodded. They set off for the village, which turned out not to be very far from there. You have quite a lot of people here, there must be at least. Luffy saw almost a city of Shandies, much more than he had seen in the work. The people looked at him with curiosity and fear. The children pointed to Luffy as if he were some idol while other children ran. Are you the man who defeated Enel? A girl appeared in front of the group, coming out of the crowd. You could say that. What's your name? Luffy looked at the girl with a smile. He knew the girl, but still asked her name to not seem strange. I'm Aisa, she shouted happily. You can say that Enel is no longer a problem, Luffy announced, shaking his cap, and continued with the others to a larger tent. They gathered in a circle, the Shandies led by Wiper, and Ganfall waited, their expressions mixing caution and anticipation. Luffy calmly sat down to discuss the future plans for Skypiea. Wiper was the first to break the silence. You say that Skypiea is now your territory, but we demand that you hand over Enel to us, Wiper spoke firmly, representing the wishes of the Shandies. He has been the source of our suffering for years. Luffy with a calm look replied, I understand the pain he caused, but handing over Enel is not an option. He is under my custody now and will be more useful alive under my conditions. Ganfall with a worried expression intervened. This might cause discontent among our people. They have been expecting justice for years of oppression. And no, Luffy agreed, but I need you to trust me. My crew and I will stay in Skypiea for the coming years. We are not here to rule or interfere in your internal affairs. I will deal with Enel in my way. What I can give you is your freedom, and I will further improve the living conditions for all the inhabitants of the kingdom. Wiper, still cautious, asked, So, what is your plan for Skypiea if not to govern? We'll use this time to train and grow stronger, Luffy explained. And I want Skypiea to follow a development agenda. We'll create ties with kingdoms from the Blue Sea and strengthen the island's economy, improve living conditions, and ensure a safe place against external threats. That sounds promising, Ganfall commented. But how do you plan to implement this agenda? And what is this about creating ties with the Blue Sea? That's never happened before in Skypiea's history. Skypiea is just one of my territories, and in each territory I establish a system that benefits both the local inhabitants and my crew. Some of these places were ruled by tyrants, or were in chaos. I changed that, Luffy said with a tone of pride. I freed them, and now they thrive under our protection and the alliances I've interwoven with other of my territories. Ganfall and the Shandies listened intently, wondering about the complexity of Luffy's influence in the world. They knew little of the outside world, which made them think Luffy was a king of the world or something. He would laugh at them if he knew their thoughts. But one thing was certain, Luffy was not just a powerful pirate. He was a leader who created and maintained a delicate balance between power, protection, and prosperity. Not just that, he was preparing all territories for a big war in the future. He might be the strongest man in the world, but he would still need armies from the territories and his own fleet. In Skypiea, it will be no different. You will have our protection and support, but I also expect this place to contribute to the wider Straw Hat network. Luffy continued. You will have autonomy, but as part of my territory, Skypiea will play a crucial role in my future plans. He emphasized the importance of Skypiea as a strategic location, situated above the Blue Sea. The island could function as a control point in the Grand Line, a base for operations while he trains his crew and recruits more members for his fleet. We will work together on this, Luffy assured. An idea is for Skypiea to thrive and its people never to fear a tyrant like Enel again. Wiper, still doubtful, said, That requires a lot of trust on our part, and I am willing to earn that trust, Luffy declared firmly. Skypiea is now part of my territory and I will take care of it. You have the freedom to govern, but we need to collaborate for the greater good of the island. Ganfall reflected for a moment before responding, See wisdom and strengthen your words, Monkey D. Luffy. I agree with these conditions. This offers us an opportunity to rebuild and prosper under the protection of your crew, which is much more favorable than living in uncertainty and fear under Enel's regime. Wapol reluctantly spoke. As much as I dislike this, do we have a choice? So, I hope you keep your word, he said with some reluctance. Luffy smiled, pleased with Ganfall's response. Oh great, working together. We can make Skypiea a better place for all its inhabitants, and create great warriors who might even defeat an Enel among you. The Shandies, though initially hesitant, also agreed, as they had no choice. But the promise of a peaceful and prosperous future, free from the threat of another tyrant like Enel, was too attractive to ignore. They accepted Luffy's proposal, realizing that despite his unconventional ways, he offered a real chance at a better future for Skypiea. Better than going to war with the titanic creatures they saw in the fight against the former god. Great, let's talk more about this in the coming days. Now do you know what's important at this moment? Luffy looked seriously at everyone present. What's most important? Someone from the crowd murmured. Luffy stood up, satisfied with the outcome of the meeting, and smiled at the people asking the question. A great feast, of course, Luffy announced. A feast? Didn't you just have one yesterday in the City of Angels? Ganfall asked, a bit suspicious. Let me tell you a pirate rule, Ganfall. Have feasts at every opportunity you get, and 2 feasts are better than 1, Luffy spoke confidently. Now let's prepare something big for the whole tribe with the good news, Luffy laughed, and everyone with no choice began to do exactly that, preparing a large party in the center of the tribe. Luffy looked around, realizing it was time to announce something important. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and using the power of the Moa Moa no Mi, amplified his voice so that everyone in Skypiea could hear him. Attention, people of Skypiea and my crew. His resounding voice echoed throughout the island, clear and powerful. Tonight, everyone should gather at the Shandy tribe for a great feast. Nami, bring the Black Pearl here too. His statement resonated through the air, reaching every corner of Skypiea. Everyone stopped what they were doing, surprised by the voice that seemed to come from the heavens, startling all the people around. He is the one who defeated Enel. And he can talk to the whole island? He is a god, I knew it. Sin, he says he is a pirate, not a god. He can defeat Enel, turn into some kind of demon, and do things even Enel can't, like talk to everyone on the island. If he is not a god, what is he? Conversations like this began to be discussed while Luffy was oblivious to all this. He wants us to do what? An angel asked, confused. Looks like we're having another party, another replied, a smile beginning to form. Damn husband. He wants me, his wife, to carry the boat alone? Nami complained. Oh Nami, are you really getting used to calling him husband like Alvida? Nojiko asked with a small smile. Of course, we plan to have children together, so I can call him husband, Nami commented with a blush on her face. Well, anyway, you can easily get the ship, Nojiko said. Yes, but Luffy could be a knight sometimes, Nami continued to complain. Meanwhile, the other crew members couldn't help but look towards the voice of their captain, already expecting something like this. Back at the Shandy tribe, after recovering from the shock of Luffy's voice reaching the entire island, they were already in motion, again preparing for the approaching feast. Alright everyone, let's make this an unforgettable night, Luffy exclaimed, enthusiastic about the idea of another celebration. Chapter Skypiea, third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. After a night full of feasting, the entire crew gathered with the fleet members in a remote corner of Skypiea, where Luffy began intensive training. He chose a spacious location, surrounded by the lush vegetation of the island and more secluded, perfect for the type of training he had in mind. Everyone, pay attention, Luffy called to the group, forming a semicircle in front of him. Oh, we are going to intensify our training. I will use my ability to increase everyone's training speed by 5 times. As you know, I plan to do some things, but I will stay with you for a week. Luffy looked at all of them, Yamato, Shirahoshi, Megalo, Roronoa Zoro, Lamy, Beppo, Chuchu, Usopp, Nami, Reiju, Hugo, Nojiko, Hachi, Kuina, Alvida, Laboon, Vivi, Karoo, Nico, Robin, Tony, Chopper, Bentham, Mr. Tubon Clay, Babe, Mr. Galdino, Mr. Marianne, Miss Golden Week, Makita, Miss Valentine, Miss Merry Christmas, Broggy, and Dory nodded. They weren't the only ones. Wapol and Gon Fall also received a summons from Luffy to train with personal attention, as he needed to strengthen this realm and wanted to recruit many talents for his fleet. Everyone waited for him to continue, then Luffy began dividing his training. Luffy continued, for those who are starting, let's focus on the 6 styles. I want everyone to master at least or techniques. And for the more advanced, let's improve our haki, especially the users of Conqueror's haki. The crew members looked at each other, knowing the next days would be of rigorous training, but they were ready for the challenge their sadistic captain would give them, at least those who knew his personality. Let's start, Luffy exclaimed, picking up his 2 books worth 7 billion berries, and immediately the place was filled with activity. He began instructing each crew member, demonstrating techniques and correcting their postures and movements. The concentration and determination of everyone were palpable. While some practiced the strikes and blocks of the 6 styles, others focused on releasing and controlling their haki. Under Luffy's attentive guidance with the manual, the atmosphere was of hard work and constant progress. Broggy and Dory, with their colossal strength and original size against each other, trained separately but with the same intensity, taking the opportunity to further hone their warrior skills. Luffy supervised every aspect of the training, offering advice and encouragement to everyone. He knew the future would bring even greater challenges, and he wanted each team member to be prepared to face them. As the day progressed and the sun began to set, exhaustion took over Luffy's team members. Their clothes were soaked with sweat, and the surrounding area was devastated, a testament to the rigorous training they had undergone. They begged for a break. "Hubby, please, we need a break," Alvida gasped, leaning on her club. "Luffy-chan, you're so cruel," Bon Clay lamented, while trying to catch his breath but strangely cheerful. "What kind of training is this? I can't take it anymore," Makita complained, collapsing on her knees. "I want to go home," Chopper murmured, visibly exhausted with tears in his eyes. Karoo! Karoo cried. Sharky, Luffy-sama. Pet's captain is a sadist," Robin commented, still maintaining her composure but clearly tired. Luffy, however, showed no mercy. "What? Are you already tired on the first day? Let's continue, we still have a lot of time before the day is over," he declared, staring at the team with a challenging look. "But Luffy," Vivi tried to argue, but was interrupted. "And stop slacking off, continue the training," Luffy insisted, his voice implacable, echoing through the area. The team members looked at each other, knowing there was no escape. With a collective sigh, they resumed training, driven by the determination of their relentless captain. Night fell over Skypiea, but the training of Luffy and his team was far from over. He didn't even seem to care that the day had ended. When the first day ended, most of them were lying motionless on the ground. "Can these people from the Blue Sea, they are so merciless," one of the Shandians lying on the ground said, looking at Luffy with fear. "I'm already missing an L," another commented. Ganfall and Wapol with their groups were not far behind, as Luffy supervised their training mercilessly. "That's enough for today," Luffy announced. Tomorrow we will double your training," Luffy said with satisfaction, eliciting a comical exclamation from everyone. "How can you say something like that?" All of them had shark teeth and white eyes as they screamed in unison. "Ha ha 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 ha." Yamato, one of the few still fine, laughed alongside Luffy at everyone's reaction. "They may complain, but they will thank me for this in the future," Luffy said. His crew had a doubled bonus with the system, combined with the Moa Moa no Mi. They reached times, meaning that this intense day of training was equivalent to days. Although Luffy had set up an inhuman training to improve their progress even more, at the end of the day he increased their recovery by times, so as the night passed, they were able to get up from the ground, recovering very quickly. They had a feast that night, everyone ate and rested, and the next day, Luffy repeated the same intensity, and the days passed like this. A week later, although many did not have the system bonus to increase their training speed, a week equaled days of training, improving their strengths by leaps and bounds, surprising everyone who was not familiar with the effects of his training. They were almost mastering one of the 6 styles and greatly improving the effects for those who are users of fruits, with Luffy giving more creative tips on how they can increase their strength. For the main crew, a week equaled days. The initial users of Haki training finally began to show visible performance with armament Haki, and the members who still lacked the 6 styles began to master the techniques, like Robin and Vivi, who finally learned mobility techniques with Geppo and Soru. Luffy made sure they also learned Tekai as a 4th technique for those who already had, improving their defense while not using Haki. It's good, but there's still a lot of work, Luffy murmured, looking at all the bodies thrown on the ground. He was thinking about how to improve the training even more. He also didn't just stay as an instructor, he was constantly training, and even when everyone was resting at night, he was still training, with Yamato accompanying him since she always came out the least harmed from the training. He was so immersed in it that he no longer slept with his girls. Only when one said she was stressed and needed to relax, Luffy would take her to a corner for a quickie. The armament Haki training is good, but they need to do observation Haki and conqueror's Haki. Of all the Hakis, observation was the most neglected. Luffy had talked to Gan Fall about the mantra used in this kingdom to define this Haki, but it was a bit outdated compared to the manual he had, and little was used. Since even though there were people born with this Haki from childhood here, which would be considered monsters by the Marines and pirates, there were no powerful users here. No one could feel people's emotions with Haki or see the future. In the second week, Luffy started a different training. He stayed with the fruits of the group and observation Haki with those who still had not learned to use it. The first few days started with icon users. During the second week of training in Skypiea, everyone in the kingdom witnessed various terrifying things in those days. Giant beasts appeared every day, and always that purple fire demon beat them, since Luffy had to control his beastification the first time, which was always uncontrollable. Shirahoshi, now the bearer of the Icon no Mi model Leviathan, transformed into a giant sea serpent. Her new form, immense and elegant, glided through the air with ease, commanding the water around her. She created gigantic waves and powerful currents with a simple movement, displaying incredible mastery over the element. Usopp, after consuming the Icon no Mi model Bahamut, took the form of a colossal dragon with a gray coloration and a fierce expression. Rays of light emanated from his body, and in the fight against Luffy, he had caused great chaos before the captain managed to knock out the giant beast. Quina, transformed by the Icon no Mi model Shiva, exhibited the power of ice created just by air molecules. She could generate gigantic pillars trying to hit Luffy while out of control. As a giant, she froze everything in her path, creating ice sculptures and causing snowstorms with a simple breath. Reiju, upon consuming the Icon no Mi model Phoenix, became a phoenix of monumental proportions, with red flames enveloping her body. Her transformation was so majestic that it surpassed in size and splendor Marco's form, another known user of the phoenix-type fruit, by hundreds of times. Zoro, now the holder of the Icon no Mi model Odin, transformed into a dark knight of colossal stature. His power of darkness manifested in black and red cuts, tearing the air and the ground with supernatural force. Of all, he was the most difficult for Luffy to knock out. After this, they began their beastifications with more control. Skypiea had become a home to colossal creatures that roamed the upper yard, as if it were a small terrain for them. Every day people saw the beasts training, as Luffy wanted them to get used to using Haki and the 6 styles in their transformations, which was very frightening, like Hugo in his Titan form, jumping into the air with Geppo in his 100-meter form. It was not only the Icon members who benefited from Luffy's last purchase in the system. Vivi could now control the wind, becoming a powerful user who generated devastating hurricanes across the area in front of her. She herself couldn't believe her current power, while she fought without fear of getting hurt, combining her 6-style ability with the fruit, making the Vivi of the past just a shadow of the power she has now. Luffy picked up his new weapon and began to practice. He bought a fencing manual, as just fighting against Mihawk and Momonga wasn't enough for him to reach an acceptable level. He trained with Zoro and Quina in those days, and the dance of elements they could create was a good spectacle in the swordsman's fight. I think they're good enough to learn on their own in the next few weeks, Luffy murmured, as he wanted to get the crew ready to continue training on their own. He would soon descend to the Blue Sea alone to resolve some things, while the crew continued training and developing on their own in this place. It was no surprise that many forces were trying to capture him, and he would have to deal with them to make it clear that he was no longer a pirate they could easily handle with a force greater than they tried in Alabasta. He knew that according to the original story, Kuzan would probably be after him at this part of the Grand Line, as well as Doflamingo and even Jack, so he would soon find out if he was powerful enough to deal with them all. Chapter 177, Skypiea 13, Third-Person POV Skypiea. First half of Grand Line, the sunlight bathed Skypiea like never before, enhancing the natural beauty of the island while a new regime had been established in the kingdom following the fall of Enel, with Gonfall being chosen as the new sovereign to govern over the entire population after officially acquiring the protection of Luffy and declaring Skypiea as a territory of the Straw Hat Pirates. Days had been passing, and Skypiea began to get used to a much more bustling kingdom than anyone remembered. With the Straw Hat crew and the newly integrated members of the fleet continuing their rigorous training regimen under Luffy's relentless leadership, each new day, the crew strove to surpass their own limits, showing visible progress that even the captain acknowledged with pride. Bragi and Dory, the colossal figures, had mastered a second technique of the 6 styles, an impressive feat that reflected not only their brute strength but also their adaptability and desire to grow as warriors. They boasted that upon their return to Elbaf, they would be the greatest warriors of the kingdom. Their movements, once guided mainly by strength, were now enhanced by a new layer of technique and precision using Soru and Geppo. Meanwhile, the other new members of the fleet, although still getting familiar with the first technique of the 6 styles since they started their training a week ago, exhibited tireless dedication. Luffy had spent the last week and a half preparing their bodies and minds for the rigorous training, and the results were beginning to show. Each of them, from Bentham to Galdino, showed a noticeable improvement, promising to become a force to be reckoned with. "This is very good," Luffy murmured, jumping back as his eyes moved across the island where his companions were training with each other to get used to their techniques in real combat. In the landscape a little above Skypiea, an epic battle unfolded between Zoro and Quina, both in their Phase 1 transformations. The fight was a spectacle of strength and skill, combining ice and darkness in an impressive duel. Zoro, in his Odin phase, sported armor of darkness that pulsed with a dark red energy. Each of his movements was accompanied by streaks of black and red light, creating an undeniable aura of power. He maneuvered with incredible speed, almost a shadow amid daylight, while his sword cut the air, leaving dark and red trails that seemed to absorb the light around. Quina, transformed into the same phase by the power of the Icon no Mi, model Shiva, was the personification of winter. Wearing a characteristic cape of her transformation with bright blue eyes, the ice that surrounded her seemed alive, reacting to her movements and emotions. With a gesture, besides sending freezing cuts with her sword, she conjured razor-sharp ice blades that flew towards Zoro with deadly precision. Her agility was accentuated by the lightness that the ice conferred, allowing her to dodge Zoro's attacks with almost ballet-like grace. With each clash of their swords, an explosion of ice and darkness erupted, sending bright fragments into the sky. Zoro, with a roar, released a wave of dark energy that swept the battlefield, only to be met and frozen midway by a wall of ice created by Quina. Boom! Elsewhere in Skypiea, above the floating island and even higher than Zoro and Quina's battle, the sky was the stage for a dazzling spectacle, marked by vibrant explosions of fire and light. Reiju and Usopp, both transformed by their Akuma no Mi, engaged in a training battle at a new level of the planet's atmosphere. Reiju, now in the colossal form of a phoenix, her red flames shining intensely, cut through the sky with elegance and power reminiscent of the majesty of an ancient deity. Each of her movements triggered waves of flames that lit up the skies, creating a stunning visual effect that could be seen from the entire island. On the other hand, Usopp, transformed into a radiant immense dragon, displayed his own grandeur. His body, emitting dazzling rays of light, moved with impressive agility for his size. Each of Usopp's light shots was a demonstration of strength and precision, intended to test the reflexes and resilience of Reiju, who also used her healing power to recover from any attack. On the ground, the inhabitants of Skypiea watched in awe. It was an extraordinary sight, 2 beings of ancient legends battling in the skies. Children pointed upwards, mesmerized, while adults watched with a mix of admiration and reverent fear. With each collision between fire and light, a vibrant shockwave was sent through the skies, accompanied by a thunderous sound that echoed throughout the island. It was a dance of elemental powers, a contest between 2 forces of nature incarnated in the forms of Reiju and Usopp. Hachi was launching slashes at Beppo, who was using Soru and Geppo to fly and dodge, while responding with kicks of the 6 styles, Rankyaku. Boom! Vivi and Nami were fighting against each other while using their wind powers, creating hurricanes in the middle of the island. Nami now wielded a spear that Luffy had bought in the system, and she had her own ability with a non-grade spear, but as powerful as a high-grade one. Vivi was struggling to keep up with Nami, as the Kokoyashi girl had been training a month earlier, and Vivi was still getting used to her powers. Boom, 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 boom. Robin had created more than 200 arms with hands, forming a pistol with all the hands, launching hundreds of Shigan like a burst of air simulating shots. Meanwhile, Alvida was deflecting all the attacks with her club. "Aren't you doing very well for a lover?" Alvida taunted Robin, but the latter continued launching attacks without caring about the provocations. Boom! Debris flew everywhere in a corner of the island. Transformed Chochu was fighting against Hugo, while fire, lightning and ice flew towards the man in the first phase of his transformation. His body covered in bright and sharp rocks, creating defenses against the crew dog's elemental powers with his earth power. Lami had activated his room while fighting against Nojiko. The latter tried to dodge his attacks using her first acquired ability Kami to bend her body and avoid the cuts that would remove parts of their bodies. Lami was in control of the situation but had to be careful with Nojiko's speed, which combined her bomb fruit on the feet with her Soru, giving her a speed that even Lami could not follow. Shirahoshi and Megalo were fighting each other. Although it was the calmest fight, Megalo tried using Tekai to protect himself from his friend's attacks, trying to learn to use the power of his water element fruit. She now used a trident that Luffy bought for her, a weapon called Nejibana, which made her very happy, as it was the weapon her father and brothers also used. The fight usually ended when Shirahoshi used her haki and broke through Megalo's Tekai defense. Laboon and Chopper had a balanced fight, one against the other, both still using few techniques. Megalo had his strength but it was reduced by his current size due to the Moa Moa no Mi, and Chopper had his fruit. Luffy suggested that Chopper use the most powerful transformation to start having control over it. Reluctantly, Chopper used it and always got out of control, but Luffy easily knocked him out, which always made the little doctor wake up angry and bandaged in recent days. "Pay attention to our fight, Luffy," Yamato shouted from the sky, making Luffy divert his attention from everyone to look at his wife sending an attack directly at him with haki and transformed into her phase. Boom! Luffy in his phase jumped back and dodged the attack. He saw Yamato not giving up and attacking him directly. He wrapped his arm in haki, a constant evolution of himself in relation to his abilities. Luffy had become much stronger in these last 11 days, and managed to increase another level with his Moa Moa no Mi, allowing him to multiply times. His days of training became days, which made him grow a lot in armament, conqueror, and even start training with observation haki. Yamato wrapped her body in haki. Now she was much more powerful, even able to add the conqueror's haki to her attacks. The two fists collided wrapped in haki, creating a shockwave that made the entire upper garden tremble. Luffy compensated for Yamato's advantage of wrapping her attacks with armament and Conqueror with his multiplication to balance or even be stronger than his wife. There was no doubt that Luffy was the most powerful member of the crew, taking this title from Yamato at that moment. Boom, boom. The fight between the two was much more wild, even affecting the battles of others with the shockwaves between Luffy and Yamato. Everyone in Skypiea could hear the explosions between the two. Not just that, every day at this time the entire crew would engage in battles against each other, with the fight between Luffy's purple flames and Yamato's ice devastating the largest area. Show-offs as always. Wapol looked enviously at all the main crew members fighting. They had started training with Luffy last week, which proved to be quite beneficial for everyone involved, despite being quite rigorous. Everyone had become much stronger and finally learned a technique they had trained for, as their bodies were strong enough for it. However, compared to the main members who were fighting each other around the island, they seemed so weak. Wapol and other shandies recognized that many of them were stronger than Enel, not just Luffy, making them wonder where so many monsters came from. The whole day was filled with fights and enhancements of their abilities, so that at the end of the day, Luffy would gather everyone for a grand feast. Feast-chan, Bon Clay, always cheerful, performed his act, even though he was injured from the day's training. "Captain, may I bake a beautiful cake for you? You can even eat me. Kia ha 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 ha." Makita grabbed Luffy and teased him. "Get away from him, you bitch." Nami kicked Makita's butt, making her fly, but she stabilized in the air, controlling her weight. "You damn woman, I'll teach you a lesson one day." Makita angrily spoke to Nami, nursing her kicked butt. Rum. Nami just crossed her arms and made an arrogant sound. Hey, now let's continue our long-awaited feast. Everyone get ready, Luffy announced. And everyone prepared alongside Black Pearl for another common night among the group. After another night of partying, Luffy left the captain's room where he had left Nami, Nojiko, Yamato, Alvida and Robin, who had finally joined them, and went to the deck. There, he found Zoro drinking his sake. Hello Zoro, I'm thinking of visiting our prisoner. How is he? Luffy asked. Captain. Well, I left food for him but he doesn't touch it, just like the last few times this week, he just doesn't eat and doesn't talk to me. Zoro spoke, drinking more of his drink. I see, it seems his defeat has really shaken him. Do you think he wants suicide? Luffy asked. I don't think so, he's just denying reality I guess. It happens to many warriors, but if he doesn't accept it and move forward, he will die for sure. Zoro spoke calmly. I understand, it's time to see him for the first time after our fight, let's see how he is and make some proposals. Luffy smiled. Do you intend to recruit him to the fleet? Zoro asked, raising an eyebrow. Oh no, I intend to recruit him to join the main crew. Luffy smiled excitedly. The lightning fruit could easily be acquired, but who would fill it? Luffy had no one in his main crew suitable for the fruit. Enel ate it and trained it for many years, even possessing power to destroy the whole Skypiea. Not only that, he is a talented engineer. Leaving him alive was much more useful than killing him and taking his fruit. The people of Skypiea might protest about this, but Luffy wouldn't care about it, and would end any protest they would make against him and his plans. He wasn't a good Samaritan and always made that clear. He is a person with ambitions and dreams, and even if he is a villain for it, he will realize them. He himself has the mentality that he would burn the world to achieve his goals. He would just think before if his crew, family and his people were safe, as long as that was okay, he would do anything. Luffy thought calmly about the positives as he headed alone to the prison that morning. We're going to have a long talk in L. Chapter 178, Skypiea, 14 Third-person, POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. Luffy entered the ship's prison, the sounds of his footsteps echoing off the metallic walls creating a somber atmosphere. The dim light from the lamps illuminated the path to the cell where Enel was detained. Approaching, Luffy observed Enel's figure, chained and visibly downcast, with his head low and eyes fixed on nothing, yet conscious. Enel, still conscious, didn't bother to raise his gaze to face Luffy. His face showed signs of exhaustion and dejection, highlighted by lack of sleep and food. The atmosphere in the cell was laden with a mix of defeat and resignation, a contrasting sight from the first time Luffy met that user of the Goro Goro no Mi. Luffy stopped in front of the bars, silently observing Enel for a moment. Enel, Luffy called, but there was no response. The former god of Skypiea remained still, as if lost in his own thoughts and defeats. Luffy sighed, realizing Enel's state of mind. You haven't eaten anything since you were brought here, huh? I came here to talk to you. I've decided what I'm going to do with you. Luffy commented, but still, Enel remained silent, his expression unchanged. Finally, Enel lifted his head, facing Luffy with a look mixing curiosity and disdain. For a moment, Luffy couldn't help but be a bit perplexed. I expected to find someone angry and full of hate for me, hurling insults at me, not someone with a defeated expression, Luffy commented, crossing his arms. He was still surprised by Enel's expression. What do you want, demon? Have you come to mock me? Enel spoke for the first time, but his tone wasn't as arrogant as it used to be. Enel, listen carefully. I'm not here to mock your defeat. Luffy spoke dryly after recovering from the initial surprise. Enel, with his empty and defeated gaze, met Luffy's eyes. I've lost everything, my divinity, my power. What else is left for me now? What do you want? Since you lost a fight, even I can't win them all. Why are you so downcast? Since I lost, I'm no longer a god. Are you happy now? I'm a fraud, Enel said, sounding like a boy losing his favorite toy. So you take this thing even more seriously than I could imagine. Luffy wanted to slap him at that moment. He expected someone arrogant, but Enel seemed just a shell of what he used to be after losing a fight. Luffy put his fingers to his chin and thought about how to deal with a guy like this. I might have lost the fight, Enel, but that doesn't completely define you. Defeat is just a path to becoming stronger. We humans always learn from our mistakes and move forward improving. That's what makes us so special, Luffy said, adopting a thoughtful tone. Since I was a god, not a human, Enel murmured. Whatever. Luffy was holding himself back from punching this guy. Enel, looking back down, replied, Ain't to lose to a mere pirate who arrived on the same day. I am not worthy of being a god. You may have lost our fight, but do you still want to be a god? Can you still be one? Luffy asked casually, trying not to hit the guy. Enel looked at him with some surprise. I could? I'm no longer invincible, he grumbled. And as I said, defeat is part of the path and the ladder. Enel, want your title of god back? Then defeat me in a fight, join me on my journey to the top of the world, and beat me. By then, you will be considered a god again. To be a god, you have to be at the top of this world, and if you don't defeat my future self, you will never be the strongest in the world. Luffy spoke calmly, imagining he would be among the most powerful forces in the world. What would I gain by joining you, and why would I do that? Enel spoke in a slightly surprised tone. You'll gain power, fame and riches, everything a god can gain, and not just in Skypiea. Your abilities are not yet at their peak, you can become much more powerful than now. There will be many powerful adversaries in that time, adversaries you couldn't even imagine beyond me. This journey is not just for you to grow stronger, but to reach the pinnacle of the planet. Isn't that what you desire, Enel? Luffy argued. Enel was somewhat lost. Moreover, you've only lived on the Sky Island, you don't know the vastness of the Blue Sea. I'm giving you a chance to truly know this world, your chance to see and evolve your knowledge and strength, like a true god. Luffy decided to take this quite strange approach in his opinion, but if it results in a new powerful companion, he will do it, as he has approached some members of his crew in a very strange way too. He looked at Enel before the latter could respond and continued. But don't think it will be easy here, it will be a gain-gain proposition, you help me and I help you, aiming to conquer the entire Blue Sea of this world. In the end, you beat me and become a god again, recognized not just by this realm, but by a number of people thousands of times greater than the inhabitants of Skypiea, Luffy concluded. Enel, surprised by the unusual and intriguing proposal of this demon, Enel called him that because of Luffy's final form, so he nicknamed him that in the end, and saw only Luffy using his human form to hide that beast inside him. Enel pondered for a moment, his empty eyes reflecting a mix of doubt and despair. However, even in his defeat, the flame of ambition still burned within him. Are you serious? Enel asked cautiously. Absolutely, Luffy replied confidently. See, I believe we all evolve constantly. In overcoming defeats, you'll become stronger and stronger. If you wish to be a god again, then accept the challenge. Prove yourself, not just to me but to yourself. A god isn't the most powerful being. If I reach the top of this world and you defeat me, who would dare deny your divinity? Enel, though hesitant, seemed to consider the proposal. He raised his head, a glint of determination returning to his eyes. Accept the challenge, demon. I will be your ally, but only until the top of the world. And when the time comes, I will surpass you and reclaim my place as a true god. Luffy cracked a knowing smile, recognizing the spark of resolve in Enel. Oh great, then it will be an interesting journey, Enel. Get ready for what's to come, because you've had an easy life here. From this moment, you'll know what it's like to work hard to get stronger. Enel, still cautious, agreed with a nod. But don't think this is a forever alliance. The moment we reach the top, it will be my time to claim my place as a true god. Understood, Enel. Our alliance is until then, Luffy replied, maintaining his casual tone. System, crew. Enel has joined as a member of your crew. This is very good, Luffy thought. Now he had a second Logia in his crew. Eat this and let's go outside. Luffy asked him to at least eat, and Enel did just that. Luffy waited for him, and as soon as the man had eaten his first meal in days, the new captain of the former god released him from his chains, asking him to follow him outside. As soon as they left the ship, the main crew and fleet were on deck having their first meal. Everyone looked surprised to see Luffy accompanied by Enel right behind him, astonishing people with this new character. If there had been one of the Shandies at that moment, they probably would have attacked Enel. I see you've recruited him, Captain, Zoro spoke from a corner, a bit surprised. Luffy and his charisma are unbeatable, Nojiko commented. Seitan must have been threatened, Nami said jokingly, mocking Luffy. Hello, prisoner Sama, are you a new member of the crew? Shirahoshi asked, approaching Luffy. Enel, still adjusting to his new position, looked at the mermaid princess. Yes, it seems so, he replied, his voice still carrying a trace of his former arrogance. The crew's reaction varied between surprise, mistrust, and curiosity. Enel, noticing the stares, raised his voice, attempting to reaffirm his superiority. Listen well, mortals, I am still Enel, the god of thunder. I am here not by defeat but by choice. This pirate, he said, pointing to Luffy, interposed a challenge I could not refuse. Sen, are you threatening Luffy-sama? Shirahoshi asked, a bit cautious. Yes, I will defeat him and reclaim my title as a god, so I will eventually defeat him, Enel said firmly, but before he could respond, a punch enveloped in haki struck him. The other god once again fell unconscious on the deck. Enel was so exhausted from not eating and sleeping in the last few days that he couldn't react to the mermaid's punch beside Luffy. The deck fell silent after that. Shirahoshi had just defeated the terrible and arrogant god with a single move. Ha 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 ha! You don't need to act like that, Shira. We have an agreement that he must defeat me as long as he works with us from now on, Luffy commented, laughing. It seems this god is nothing, Mikita murmured, looking at the fallen Enel in a corner. Anyway, Chopper, take care of him, Luffy spoke to his only doctor present. Yes, Luffy. Chopper rushed to check on Enel. Hugo, as soon as Enel wakes up, get him familiar with the crew's operation and each member, and if he causes trouble, you can beat him. Luffy turned to his companion. Hugo had already mastered armament haki, something he had shown talent for. Leave it to me, Captain. I'm sure the god and I can become great friends, Hugo said, cracking his knuckles, already imagining that he might have to hit Enel a few times. That's good. Anyway, I'm noticing some of you are missing. Where are Reiju and Lami? He raised an eyebrow. Reiju prepared breakfast and left with Lami. They had some kind of competition as usual, Vivi murmured. Everyone knew how competitive they were with each other, ever since they started training in this realm. They had been competing at various times of the day in some corner of the upper garden, and Luffy had to call them for training, otherwise they would spend all day competing and insulting each other. I see, Luffy murmured, and walked off to a corner. I'll deal with them. You guys can start the daily training, and Hugo, beat Enel until he loses his arrogance. It would be annoying to have someone talking like that all the time during our journey, Luffy said and jumped into the air, heading towards where his companions were at the moment, determined to end their competition in a way that he practiced with all his women when he was dissatisfied with something. Chapter 179, Smut, 18+ third-person POV Skypiea, first half of Grand Line. In a specific corner of Skypiea, in a secluded place away from everyone, explosions occurred as two people fought each other at that moment. You think you're better than me? Shouted a frustrated voice as her body was engulfed in flames. I am better, said another feminine voice in the midst of a blue space. Dodging fire attacks while switching places with various objects in the scene. Don't get cocky, gothic woman. Come on then, woman with curly eyebrows. The two attacked each other at that moment in a never-ending competition that had started in the last few days. With kicks and sword strikes, both fought with all their strength, and explosions were heard for miles. Try to escape this, Reiju said, covering her foot with haki and the power of the phoenix, while Lami enveloped her sword in armament haki, and the slash of the Opopen no Mi. As they were about to collide head-on, something happened at a speed neither could react to. A shadow emerged from the sky, flying directly into the middle of their attack. Luffy wasted no time and punched both of their heads, sending them flying to the ground immediately. Boom! Boom! Debris flew as two holes appeared on the scene. Ah, that hurt, Captain, Reiju complained, emerging from the hole with a lump on her head. Damn, Luffy, Lami commented, coming out of the other hole with the same lump. Were you skipping training again to have this childish fight? Luffy commented, still in the air, crossing his arms. Neither of them responded, and Luffy just sighed. Once you can be competitive, but don't get so addicted to it, it's disrupting the training, and training is sacred, Luffy said. Whatever. And I find it hard to end this, since I have to make clear my superiority. Superior to whom? Certainly not to me, so I can prove it, then come. Santa, let's compete. Luffy just shook his head and decided to act. He simply used his speed 60 times and disappeared. Before Reiju and Lami could react, they were enveloped by Luffy in a hug, and he took off to his. What are you doing, Captain? What does this mean? Before they could process with the speed of the wind, Luffy reached a waterfall on the island in an even more secluded part and threw them directly into the water. But he did something before letting them go. Luffy burned all their clothes, making the women fall naked into that water. Lemon start, my clothes? You damn womanizer, what do you think you're doing? Reiju appeared on the surface of the water covering her breasts. Lami exploded from the water next door, also demanding what he was doing burning his clothes like that. You better explain this, because I want to kill you now. Luffy fell in front of the two and grabbed them naked while they couldn't even react. Let's get this over with. We've been together for months, and it's time to make you my women. Luffy smiled at the two women around him. Who wants to be the wife of a womanizing captain who already sleeps with 5 women? Lami complained, but Luffy kissed her suddenly. Her lips disconnected from Lami's and went to a stunned Reiju who couldn't even react. Acha. That's refreshing, Luffy commented with a smile after kissing them both. Captain, what is that? Kill him. They both screamed with red faces while there was drool on their lips. Before that, I'm deciding who kissed better. It's hard to say because I liked them both, Luffy commented before they acted. This sparked a certain reaction in both of them, making Lamy not even care that she was naked. Of course it was me, I'm a better kisser, she said, crossing her arms while her face was red. What nonsense, my kiss was the best, you didn't see how the captain liked it. Equally red Reiju said without caring that her breasts were in front of Luffy on display. Luffy just smiled, this is going to be a long day. A while later Luffy was sitting on the edge of the waterfall meanwhile. 2 women were sucking his dick as a competition. I suck. Better, sin give. Space to me. The captain. Likes more my mouth. Meanwhile Luffy was enjoying every lick on his cock, while these women did it with such ferocity that he considered it the best blowjobs he had ever gotten in his life. Luffy didn't even care as he reached his limit and came on both their faces after minutes of competition. It's good, looks like we have a draw. Luffy smiled as they looked at each other with his seed dripping down their faces. Don't look at it like that, let's compete in another way to break the tie. Luffy smiled and picked them both up, laying them on the rocks and running his hands over both their bodies until he reached their pussies. The next competition will be whoever lasts the longest, whoever comes first loses, how about that? Luffy smiled. So I've never done this, but I'm going to win. Reiju started to moan when Luffy started to run his hot finger inside her virgin pussy. Will be I that go will. Win. Lamy moaned equally, with a sensation she had never felt in her life. Luffy played with those hot and wet holes as he gave these women a feeling of pleasure they had never felt in their lives. The game continued and he made her come together, making them scream. Luffy appealed, playing with his tongue right after their orgasms, making each one come at least twice. Captain. You damn, that feels so good, Reiju commented, trying to breathe normally. Some might be enjoying this, but just a little. Lamy plays hard to get. Let's go to the next competition, now I'm going to fuck all you. Is better you are ready, because the fun starts now, Luffy announced while maintaining his shameless smile. So he began his action by fucking each of those pussies with force and speed, making the women come equally with the pleasure their captain was going through. Hours passed and those waterfalls were involved in constant moans. Luffy didn't just limit himself to a few positions, he fucked Reiju and Lamy in every way that could even make them compete for whoever rode him hard, making them jump on top of him as if his life depended on them to beat his opponent. Meanwhile, Luffy just took advantage while his penis was attacked by both women. In the end, Luffy laughed looking at the women who even managed to kiss each other in pleasure while one mounted Luffy and he sucked another's pussy. Lemon and Tensai don't think that's enough, Luffy commented looking at his erect dick. He hadn't even gotten 100% while both Reiju and Lamy fell to the ground in a faint. Looks like I'm going to have to use it, Luffy commented, and looked towards a corner of the forest, where not only could he smell a familiar scent of a person, but his observation haki began to manifest, and he could sense presences. He used his speed and appeared naked in front of a blonde-haired woman spying on Luffy eating Reiju and Lamy while he masturbated. In addition to skipping training to come here, do you still masturbate while watching others have sex? What should I do with you, huh? Luffy commented looking at Makita. I was just passing by, kia ha 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 ha. She laughed awkwardly and quietly while on her face there was the shadow of Luffy's penis. I'm going to punish her now, Luffy announced and removed her clothes. A moment later while Reiju and Lamy were lying on the rocks, Makita was on top of them while Luffy fucked her in a doggy-style position. A while later, she fell to the ground too. I'm still not satisfied, he commented, as he had only come times, and was happy when shadows appeared from the sky, and the other women appeared after noticing that the captain hadn't shown up at training all day. Luffy wasted no time. He fucked more Yamato, Nami, Nojiko, Robin, and Alvida while he was not satisfied. While he fucked one, others appeared to see why Luffy was taking so long. He at the end of the day had turned that waterfall into a sex zone that he practiced for hours on end. Chapter 180, Blue Sea Third-Person POV Skypiea, First Half of Grand Line. Luffy stood in front of all his crew members, each of them giving their captain strange looks. So you'll disappear for a month? Vivi asked, trying to understand what her captain had just said. As I mentioned over a week ago, I am going to head out alone to the Grand Line to sort out some things. I'll return as soon as everything is resolved, and then we can continue our journey. So are you sure, Luffy? You are a pirate with a bounty of 500 million. With the events at Alabasta, who's to say an admiral isn't after you right now? Nojiko spoke up. Look, that's very likely. But it doesn't matter. I'll see if I'm strong enough to handle an admiral. I'm confident, Luffy commented with a smile. He had made significant progress in both armament hockey and conqueror's hockey, albeit haphazardly, and had begun training in observation hockey. He possessed a small arsenal of abilities as powerful as any of the top commanders of the most powerful Yonkus. And will stay here training? Zoro raised the question. Exactly. I've memorized the book on hockey over the last week, so I can train on my own. Meanwhile, you guys will continue your training with it. I know it'll be slow compared to the effects of my Moa Moa no Mi, but I'll be back soon, and we'll finish training before returning to the sea as a crew, Luffy explained. We've already had to go 2 weeks without you, and now you're disappearing for a month? Nami complained, and Yamato agreed. It's true, husband. A month is a long time, Alvida commented. Don't worry, it will pass in the blink of an eye, Luffy said confidently. I wonder how many women you're going to bring back here. Nami continued to mutter. Maybe 1 or 2 at most. But when I return, we could even get married here, Luffy commented. Married? Yamato, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Robin, even Vivi and Shirahoshi looked at Luffy, stunned. He wants to marry us? Reiju commented. After what he did to us, the least he could do is take responsibility, Lami spoke. You talk as if it were a bad thing. You were moaning like a bitch, Reiju retorted. Of course I was seducing. Didn't you see that I'm better in bed than you? You think you'll be a better wife than who? I can cook. Have you ever seen a housewife who can't? Maybe you'll be the first, Reiju mocked. You can cook, but I'll take care of my husband. Can you do that? Lami countered. What's going on here? Beppo murmured, lost amidst these routine squabbles, but over a topic he never imagined hearing. Anyway, I'm off, Luffy said before any of the women surprised by his words could respond. Wings sprouted from his back, and he took off into the sky. As he soared through the clouds, the horizon-tinged blue came into view. He descended rapidly, aided by his wings and gravity. As he fell, a thunderous sound appeared beside him, and Enel, surrounded by thunder, joined him. Luffy had summoned him to descend together, considering it a good experience for the arrogant god. So we're going to see the mortals of the Blue Sea? Enel said arrogantly, and Luffy already wanted to hit him. Listen, Enel, you can't act like you're invincible. You were beaten by a girl who was scared until recently and got thrashed by Hugo. Haven't you learned your lesson? Luffy commented. Skitsk. They have powers I've never seen before. That doesn't mean I'll lose to everyone. After all, I am a god, and I've discovered I'm getting stronger with each defeat, Enel admitted with some recognition. I can agree with the second part, but the first is hard to trust. We're going to meet very powerful people on this journey. Be prepared, Luffy advised and continued. Anyway, let's see who gets there first, Lord of Thunder, Luffy challenged, his wings blazing with fire before he used the power of his fruit and shot off before Enel could react. Worthy of being my rival, I will defeat him and become a god. Enel confidently followed Luffy. It was a shame they descended in broad daylight, for it would have been a spectacular sight to see a purple meteor and a blue lightning bolt racing down the sky at high speed. Luffy was much faster than Enel and hadn't even used the full power of his fruit abilities. His physique had reached a new level, and he was pleased with that. After descending to about 300 meters above the sea, Luffy veered off in a direction following an eternal pose on his wrist. He was prepared to visit a few islands during this time, with his ultimate goal being Shiki. However, he could venture to some islands for now. Enel followed Luffy behind, and they traveled across the sea using their elements until an island appeared on the horizon. Luffy had a smile on his face. He wanted to provoke someone in particular and chose some islands around Jaya, known for an underworld smuggling network. The island was a peaceful place with a serene atmosphere at the moment, where inhabitants went about their daily lives engaged in activities like fishing, trading, and harmonious living. This routine was a stark contrast to the other type of trade happening in one of the island's large structures, serving as a warehouse for underworld goods being unloaded to be transported elsewhere. Suddenly, the people stopped their activities to look up as their tranquility was disrupted by a terrifying phenomenon. A massive bolt of lightning tore through the sky, followed by a deafening boom. The inhabitants looked up, alarmed, as a figure enveloped in electricity appeared in the sky. It was Enel, the user of the lightning loggia, descending towards the island at impressive speed, his presence exuding power and danger. Almost simultaneously, a flaming object resembling a meteor appeared in the sky, It was Luffy, whose wings burned with purple flames, diving towards the island at breakneck speed. The intensity of his descent created a bright trail in the sky, resembling a shooting star in daylight. The islanders quickly ran for shelter, fearing the worst. Soon there was an explosion at the city's port, the impact of Luffy and Enel hitting the ground so powerful it caused a tremendous explosion, sending dust and debris flying everywhere, breaking the area where they had landed. When the dust settled, Luffy and Enel emerged from the craters they had created. As the dust settled and Luffy confidently walked through the town, the island's inhabitants, still stunned by the sudden and spectacular landing of the two individuals, began to recognize the figure moving among them. Shock and surprise were evident on their faces, and whispers quickly spread through the crowd. Can it be? Is that him? Monkey D. Luffy, set pirate with a bounty of million? Same one who took down Crocodile and Jinbei? And even faced a vice admiral of the navy? The whispers grew in volume and intensity as the residents gathered to get a better view of the infamous pirate. Luffy, however, showed no interest in his fame or the stir he was causing. His focus was on the weapon depots and human trafficking he knew to be part of the illicit operations controlled by Don Quixote Doflamingo in these waters. Ignoring the frightened and admiring glances of the residents, Luffy continued on his path, with Enel following close behind. Realizing the pirate's intentions, the island's inhabitants began to distance themselves, fearing what might happen next. Everyone was aware of the activities happening on the island, but no one wanted to get involved, as anyone there would be killed. So, the inhabitants went about their lives while turning a blind eye to what happened in that depot. He's heading for the building of that organization. What does he plan to do? Sinis is going to bring trouble to the island. But who can stop someone like him? A resident spoke. Knowing this would not go unnoticed by the criminals, and as Luffy walked towards the place, he was clearly an enemy wanting to cause chaos. Should we destroy this place? Enel asked, looking at the large building, while a crowd of men in front of the place pointed their guns at the two. Pirate Monkey D. Luffy. What are you doing here? If you're here to cause trouble, know that this place is protected by Joker, the king of the underworld, a man shouted. Don't destroy the place until we loot everything in it. But you can attack these people, Luffy commented, completely ignoring the guard who yelled at him. Understood. Lightning before the men could react, Enel launched a bolt of lightning at them, pulverizing everyone. Those who witnessed this couldn't help but be surprised. Meanwhile, Luffy walked up to the building before blowing up the wall with a punch enveloped in flames. Boom! With Luffy and Enel united by a common goal, they launched into destruction inside the underworld smuggling building. The island soon began to hear the explosions from both of their powers. Luffy entered the building through the hole he created, and Enel followed. Sounds of explosions inside the building, walls being destroyed with thunder and flames, windows breaking, and people running out seeking anywhere but there, could be heard from outside. The defenders of the place, although heavily armed, were caught off guard by the sudden invasion and the overwhelming power of the duo. They were completely powerless. Despite their desperate efforts to protect the operations, each attempt at resistance was futile against the combination of brute force and skill of the two pirates. They are destroying everything. No one can stop them. Who is that alongside Mugiwara? His power is terrifying. He controls lightning as if they were toys. People continued to comment from outside while Luffy first headed to the weapon depots. Using a combination of physical strength and the intense heat of his purple flames, Luffy dismantled the depots. The structures that once housed an illegal arsenal were now nothing but smoldering ruins. Next, Luffy focused on the human trafficking sites. Upon arriving, he used brute force to break locks and chains, freeing the captives. You're free now! Get out of here and find a safe place, Luffy told the former slaves, guiding them out of the facilities. The freed, initially confused and fearful, began to run outside. Lastly, Luffy headed to Doflamingo's secret vault. With a powerful punch, reinforced by armament haki, he burst open the vault door. Inside, he found a vast amount of money, valuable items, and some documents. Without hesitation, Luffy began looting the vault, collecting everything. After that, he began to head towards the exit without any resistance, and encountered Enel electrocuting a group of enemies with pistols and rifles trying to harm Enel, but he was a Logia. We've done all we should here, let's get out of this place, Luffy said, and Enel nodded, following him. I thought we would find powerful adversaries here. I could kill everyone here with one strike, Enel spoke arrogantly. Yes, you could, but we came here to do something else. And we are just starting in the Blue Sea. Don't think everything will be like this island or the next. As soon as you see the guy we are provoking, you'll see the strength of someone even stronger than you, Luffy said as he headed for the exit. Stronger than me? That's nonsense, Enel retorted, and Luffy remained silent, continuing towards the exit. As soon as they both stepped outside, Luffy and Enel distanced themselves from the building, before Luffy raised his hands and launched a fireball into the middle of the place, lighting up the town with flames engulfing the entire place in an explosion. Boom! The town shook as onlookers began to run, thinking Luffy would destroy the entire city. A beautiful explosion, Enel commented. Con, let's go. We have 5 more islands to visit with these depots. Luffy ignored Enel's comment and moved on, spreading his wings and taking off into the sky. He had gathered information from the Vault of Luminarchia, and wanted to start his journey by provoking Doflamingo's wrath even more, hoping to encounter him here. As I mentioned in the start of the video, there will be no upload tomorrow. The regular 1 part a day will resume from Tuesday.